I'd like to call to order the Board of Directors for the Vallecitos Water District. And before we begin, would you check your cell phones and turn them off or on buzz? Thank you very much. And the pledge today will be done by General Manager Dennis Lamb.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Diane.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Ferguson?
Yes, here.
Director Martin?
Here.
Director Paul?
Here.
Director Fernandez?
Here. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I don't see any oral communications.
We do have an introduction.
We do.
New employee.
Thank you very much.
Can't hide. Don't hide.
Yeah, we're gonna find
Right
you.
here, that's perfect. You can stand right
Will you gather together?
now. This is Steve Bioso. He actually joined the district on November 12th in the position of financial analyst. That's actually a new position for this year. And he joins us from the private sector, where he's worked for Ractelis Financial Consultants for the past 8 years. And in his leisure time, he enjoys watching sports, movies, traveling, and playing poker.
And what?
And playing poker.
Ooh.
I was waiting to see for the
Now
very
we're
end.
talking. I don't know now which question to ask you first. Did you see Hunger Games?
What's that?
Did you see Hunger Games yet?
The first one, I haven't seen the
Oh,
new
you
one.
must go to IMAX to see it.
The new one?
Yes.
Good, you recommend it?
Oh, yeah, very good.
They play poker?
Yeah, I'm a poker player too, but we'll talk about that.
Talk about it.
They shot each other with bows and arrows.
What Hunger Games got to do with poker?
Yeah, I said,
Well,
I
this,
thought
I
they just
thought it
shot
was-
each other with bows and
Well, I
arrows.
like movies too, so I thought.
Movies was one of his topics
Oh.
as well.
I just wonder if you could do something good with our money if he's playing
Oh,
poker.
like invested in me?
If that's okay, you know.
Yeah,
Financial.
you'll have to talk to Tom about that.
Tom will let him play.
John.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the consent calendar, if you will, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And there is some discussion, I believe.
Yeah, just a quick one, just to be correct. Item 1.1 on the minutes, page 28. I believe that, it's just a wording inaccuracy. I believe that the chairperson at the time was Vice President Ferguson, and I believe she made the motion, I didn't. I started to make it, but then it was taken over by the chair, and she made
Oh, so the motion was made by Ferguson?
was actually made by her, not by me. I just had to go on. I started it, but then Director Ferguson took over.
Okay,
If
we'll
she
go-
knew the way you wanted it worded,
Okay, we'll go back and verify the date, make sure.
just check that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in favor of it anyhow.
Okay.
But I'm just-
Thank you. We'll go back and clarify and make sure the record's correct.
Very good. And you had a
And
second
then
item?
one question on finances, page 31. And we obviously purchased the rain barrels for the rain barrel giveaway.
Yes.
$7,300. What does that actually show? And was that 100? Are they $73 a piece? Is that my understanding?
I don't have Lisa here, but that's a program that we do share with the city of San Marcos. I don't know if that's our half or if that's the total, and C will pay us back.
Okay.
But that would come out of the conservation budget.
Okay.
So I don't think there's probably a line item for it, but it would be out of the conservation
Okay, I
department.
was just wondering if that's the total cost or if that was half or,
I'm not quite sure, but I know we do split the cost with the city of San Marcos. I'll verify that for you.
thank you. Thank you. That was it.
Any other questions? Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much. On to the action items. 2.1, the approval of the construction agreement.
I'll have Mr. Gertis, if you would please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. This item is actually kind of a cleanup of a project that was almost accepted, or almost approved in 2006. Actually, they've put in all of the improvements that have already been put in. There's just cleanup because there's been a change in ownership from California Cove to San Leandro Estates, San Leandro Hills Estates. And so this is a formality that the construction agreement had expired. They signed a new construction agreement, provided the bonds to us, and we'll probably be coming back very shortly with acceptance of the facilities. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the construction agreement.
Any questions? Entertain a motion to approve. And second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, sir. Item 2.2, the annual audit. I've been waiting all month for this.
We've been waiting all year for it.
Well,
Yeah.
it finally showed up this month.
I'll have Tom walk you through this process.
I'm not going to walk you through, but I will introduce the people that will walk you through. We have with us David Foreman. He's with White Nelson D.L. Evans. He's a partner with the firm. And Johnny Fusco is here as well. And they'll both walk through the audit as it's presented in your board packet, starting on page 52. David will start us off with the audit letter, and then Johnny Fusco will take over and do the MD&A, and then hand it back to David so we go in order. So David, if you will come up to the podium and do your thing.
And I'm sorry, Tom, you might have, but who's he with?
White Nelson, the 11s, they're our auditors. This is the 4th year, I think, on his contract.
This is the 4th year.
Yeah,
Of a 5-year contract?
correct.
Yeah. Okay, so, Mr. President, board members, thank you for having us. As Tom said that my name is David Foreman. I'm with the accounting firm of White Nelson Deal Evans. And then we will be presenting the results of the district's 2013 audit. Also, as Tom said, I'll start, I'll hand it off to John, and then I will come back. I'm going to be talking about our opinion letter first. That's because that's in the order of the board packet. John will be talking about the MD&A section. I'll go through the statements and the notes, and then we also issued a couple of letters in conjunction with the audits, so I'll be covering those.
And what
also.
page is the letter on?
Okay, so then the first page is on page 54.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Okay, and the first thing that I wanted to say for those of you who have seen our opinion letters in the past, this one looks different. That there was actually the Auditing Standards Board put out what they call the Clarity Act, and what the Clarity Act was to make audits read a little clearer to the readers. So one of the first items of that was to make the opinion letter read a little bit more clearly. This is a form over substance, really, because if you look at our prior opinion letters, really the substance of the opinion letter really hasn't changed. It's just the layout of it. But then I wanted to step you through it. So if you're looking at the top of page 54, really the biggest difference is we're now required to put bolded headings on headings of each sections of the letter, so that makes it a little easier to like understand the different parts of the letter. So then the first part toward the top of page 1, that talks about your responsibility for these statements, and then your responsibility, and then that includes the design, the implementation, and the maintenance of internal controls relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the statements. The next, it goes into the auditor's responsibilities, and then our responsibility is to express an opinion on the statements. We do look at your internal controls, but then we do that as a function of gathering auditing evidence. So we don't render an opinion. We don't give an opinion as a function of these statements as to whether we feel that your internal control is functioning well or poorly. We would issue you letters if we felt that we had issues with the internal controls. but our auditor's report itself isn't meant to be an opinion on whether we feel that the internal controls are functioning or not. So what we do in the course of the audit is we gather audit evidence, and then you can see the last line on that page 54 is that we feel that we've gathered enough audit evidence to be able to render our audit opinion. If you flip over to page 55, the very top talks about the opinion. So I know this is probably the most important part of the whole package, but then to officially say that we are we are happy to say that we are rendering a clean opinion, that we do feel that the statements fairly present the financial position of the district as of and for the year ended June 30, 2013. I wanted to jump down to the, just jump over to the next, to the two bolded headings down, emphasis of matters. This is actually a new area, the opinion letter. It's in the middle of page 55 there. If we feel that there's something that we want to emphasize to the board, then we can actually do that in the opinion letter now. So there were actually two GASB standards that we implemented during the fiscal 13 year. One was GASB 63. Now it's actually required to be implemented during the year. The other was GASB 65, which wasn't required to be implemented until fiscal 14. But then the two interplay, so it made sense to implement them both in the same year. And actually, the GASB standard does that they actually do want you to implement early, but they just gave you another year in case you had to, in case you needed more time to be able to implement these statements. That actually, you'll see that neither of these statements really impact the district much, so then it wasn't a big problem to implement GASB 65 early. GASB 63 changes the look and feel of the statements for that for some districts that there is going to be more changes to it, but then for your statements, and then I'll get into them that when I come back up later, that for your statements, really the biggest thing is we have a title change. So then whereas we used to have a statement of net assets, that we now have a statement of net position. Similarly, that we used to have a statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net assets. Now we have revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. This is another kind of form over substance. The actual statements still look and feel the same way, that we just have a title change to them. But then as you get to the actual statements, then I can point that out to you. GASB 65.
A question,
Yeah.
Victor?
GASB 65, and I'm assuming GASB stands for the Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Yes, sorry.
And is that a California board?
No, that's a federal board.
It's a federal board?
Yeah.
So these are federal standards?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much.
GASB 65 took a look at what had been called assets and liabilities on the books, and they changed the classifications of some things. Again, there's going to be other districts who will be more impacted by this, but the big change in your statements is that forever, that when you've had debt issuance costs, so when you issue debt, when you have expenses of issuing that debt, whether legal fees, trustee fees, printing fees, all those fees used to be capitalized as an asset on your books, and then it would be written off over the life of the debt. GASB 65 came out and said that they feel that those types of costs really don't have any future benefit. So they said that they should be written off during the year that they're incurred. And then they went on to say, if you have those types of costs already sitting on your books because you had them from prior years, that you should do a prior period adjustment to write those costs off. So that's what, and then I'll actually, when we get to the statements, point that out, but then you can see in this, but you can see in the emphasis of a matter paragraph there that we did make an adjustment for just a hair under $750,000, taking those bond issuance costs off of your books. Aside from that, the final two sections really talk about the other parts of the audit report. So there's the MD&A, which John will be talking about. Then there's some other supplementary schedules in the back. So what we do is that we just let you know in these paragraphs here, just of those other sections, which of them we do and don't give an opinion on. So then the MD&A, we don't give an opinion on, because that's actually the management section of the report, and John will come up and John will analyze the numbers, compare them to prior years, and then we'll kind of give a look at the numbers in kind of a broader context of the district. So then that's all yours. We don't render an opinion. But then the other schedules that are in the back that we can cover quickly later, that those come from the numbers themselves, and then since we do audit the numbers themselves, that like we are extending our opinion to those back schedules also. So then with that, I'm going to hand it off to John Fusco, and then I will come back once he's done.
I have a question.
Yes.
I think, John, my question probably, the $747,000, were we not aware of Gatsby's change, or did it not matter to us, or? What happened?
Those particular costs that are the result of the prior period adjustment, basically when, real short without a lot of accounting jargon, real short is when you issue debt, it costs money to issue those debt, and that's called cost of issuance. Well, what we would do is we would take all those costs and put that on our balance sheet, and then amortize those to expense over the life of the debt. Well, the GASB felt that there was really no future benefit in doing that, so what they decided to do is to say, just expense it all now and get it off your books.
That's a new standard that just
Yeah,
happened.
That's a brand new standard.
The other standard was to amortize it, and then they just issued a new standard, so we
The
followed.
new
the
standard was after we had already completed our.
Oh, yeah, the final audit was complete, wasn't even addressed. And then they put implementation dates on these, and we actually implemented it a year early, so.
How does that change anything for us?
It just creates a bigger expense, and this was a prior period adjustment, so it didn't really impact this current year. It really impacted the prior year, and it brings it's very small compared to our net position, so it impacted our net position by about $743,000.
There's no direct correlation to anything we do in all reality. We took it from this pocket and we moved it to this pocket.
Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the board, it's my honor to present to you the Management Discussion and Analysis, also known as the MD&A for fiscal year 2013. I'll start off by saying that 2013 was a good year in terms of the financial health of the district. It's important to remember, too, though, that a good year is often the result of many years of strategic planning, goal setting, making difficult choices, going through the budget process to ensure the long-term viability of the district. And also, as you're all aware, that just having one good year is not a guarantee of future good years, too. We have to continue to be vigilant and proactive and realistic about the future coming up. I'm going to go over each section of the Management Discussion and Analysis briefly, and touch on the items that are significant, and then, like David said, he'll come back up and walk you through the rest of the financial statements and notes. Page 57 of your board packet is where the MD&A starts, and most, if not all, of these items have been before you throughout the year in one form or another. And here in this letter, or this discussion and analysis, are just aggregated. First and foremost of our financial highlights is our bond ratings. We received the result of 2 rating surveillances, one from Standard & Poor's, one from Fitch, and they both have stable outlooks for the future, so we're a very good credit risk, and that's going to help keep the cost of future debt low. And speaking of future debt, we did issue debt in fiscal year 2013. We received $7.1 million in proceeds to help fund the San Marcos Interceptor and Linda Vista Sewer capital projects. And that debt has an interest rate of 1.98% fixed over 10 years. Other financial highlights are our cost of water continues to rise, and we anticipate that each year and throughout the budget process. The board signed a 3-year memorandum of understanding with the Employees Association, and that memorandum of understanding will help reduce future costs as far as related to retiree benefits, the OPEB benefits that we had discussed at the last meeting, and also other payroll-related costs over the next 3 years. The fiscal year 2014 was a very conservative budget that was adopted by the board, and with only slight increases in operating costs. Our capital facilities revenues increased, as well as our own capital spending in fiscal year 2013. One other item of note is the results of operations, for the first time in a long time, fully covered our depreciation expense. And what that does is it left the district with positive operating income, which then translate into being able to set that aside into reserves to build up for future capital projects. Also, another result of that is that we were able to have rate stabilization so that we didn't have to raise sewer rates for fiscal year 2013-14.
Director?
I have a question, and just a matter of policy, so I don't know. December 5th, the Board of Directors authorized the issuance of $7.1 million of proceeds to a 1.9 point. I guess my question is, we decided to issue a bond for 2 projects. Does it fully fund the projects?
I don't believe so, no. This is
No, so the Interceptor project is long, so, you know, it's been funded for quite some time. This was primarily to cover the capital facility, the growth portion of those projects, because that's where the deficits are.
Okay.
If you recall, we have replacement funds, then we have capacity for new funds. So the replacement component comes out of the existing ratepayers reserves that we've already built up. So if they needed, an 8-inch was there, but we needed a 15, the 8-inch would be replaced through those capital reserves, and the $7 million paid for the oversize. And this was actually a bank loan, it wasn't a bond issue.
Okay, so when the bank loan was made, Union Bank, right? When the bank loan was made,
Bank of America.
what was that decision like to go for a loan instead of taking it out of reserves?
Yeah, and that was just an analysis to say, most of it, 73%, I think, of the Interceptor comes out of the restricted capacity funds. The remainder, there's 20-something% comes out of the replacement. Linda Vista, I think, was 60-40, or 40-60, or 60-40, pretty even split. But when you looked at their plenty of money, I don't say plenty of money, but there was enough money in our replacement reserves for that replacement portion. But when you looked over to the restricted funds, we're negative $5 million. Or I can't remember where we're at negative now, but it's a big negative number in our, at the time, in our capital growth funds. So that's why the money wasn't there.
Like when we were talking about the fee deferral issue, I think we noticed that under one of the funds were $4.3 million in deficit. So if we had to build any project within there, it would require a borrowing because there is no money. So that's why we had to borrow back in 2012. There was actually no capacity money available.
We looked at other things like the ability to pay debt service, and it was all within those parameters where we had the ability to incur the debt and pay it back.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The next page, page 58, describes each of the 3 financial statements and what they present. The first one is the statement of net position, and that's commonly referred to as a balance sheet outside of governmental organizations. This lists our assets, liabilities, and equity, or net position. And the way you derive net position is you take our assets, which are what we own, minus our liabilities, which are what we owe, and you get our net position. Our net position for fiscal year 2013 increased by $8.2 million. If someone were to ask me, looking at the financial statements, what's the bottom line? I would say the bottom line is our net position increased by 8.2.
Sir,
Yes.
is that because of a loan you took for 7 point?
That's the results of all of our operations. It's not exactly the $7 million loan, That went up. It's the result of all of our operations. That's kind of in the next statement, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in that position. There's
If I made the loan is a net zero, because we got 7 million cash, but we have 7 million liability, so it's
Right.
zero effect of the net position. It's what we generate through our operations.
So this increase, you can see it on the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Most people call that statement an income statement. The box in the middle of page 58 shows our operating income, non-operating revenues and expenses, and capital contributions, and that's how we arrived at the 8.2 million. The next statement is the statement of cash flows. And this is a very important statement because it shows where the cash came from to operate the district and invest and finance the district, and also where the cash went. And the district's cash decreased by 2.9 million in fiscal year 2013. Where did it go? It went into the investments, which is what we'll talk about here in a moment. Page 59 begins an analysis of fiscal year 2013 and also a comparison of fiscal year 2013 and fiscal year 2012. Page 60 provides detail regarding the major changes. One of the major changes is that increase in investments, and that's the result of the positive results of operating, which are invested then to start to build the reserves for those future capital projects, and also to offset anticipated increase in the wholesale cost of water, especially as desal is going to be coming online. Other major changes has to do with the Encina wastewater and the reallocation of operating expenses charged to their member agencies, and of course the new debt proceeds that we had there. Page 60 presents some basic but key financial ratios and indicators, and by looking at those, the results are that we have a very strong current financial position. Page 61 starts off with two graphs up top, and that shows us on the left where our revenues, the percentage breakdown of how our revenues are comprised, and on the right, how our expenses are broken out. Water sales and sewer service charges make up 70% of our revenues, and water purchases and wastewater treatment make up 50% of our expenses. A comparison follows that of our revenues and expenses lower on that page, and then page 62 has got some bullet point detail about the significant increases and decreases. And for the most part, the significant increases and decreases are similar to prior years. They're anticipated in our budget. Water rates continue to increase, property tax increased, and our cost of water increased. Encina wastewater, which David will talk about a little bit more too, since they did that reassessment, plus the increased flows that we had go out to Encina, increased our total cost there for treatment. The other expense category rose because of accounting pronouncements, where they, it's called mark to market, where we have to look at our investments and mark them to market value. As the stock market's been going crazy, our investments, which are mostly in the debt of other governments, those actually decreased. But we hold our investments to maturity, so fluctuations like that in the market really don't have a big effect except for when they get here, and then there's an accounting entry that's made to mark them down to what the market value is. David had mentioned the prior period adjustment of $750,000. So then the next section is the restrictions, commitments, and limitations. That describes the debt that the district has outstanding. And most significant on that page is the last sentence that says that our debt service coverage ratio is 4.35.
If you could, John, explain what the debt ratio coverage is and what all we include in that.
Mm-hmm. What the 4.35 represents is that our revenues covered our debt service 4 plus times. So it's a very, very strong debt service coverage ratio. Yes, sir.
So does that refer to your information that you had on page 60, which talked about current debt and current assets? You know, it has for current ratio from 11-12, it was 2.89, and then following years it was 4.12.
No,
Yes.
that's actually
Well,
the current
that's
position.
different, but-
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's the current position here. The debt service refers to more the long-term position, but
Why don't you go ahead, John, walk through each of those numbers?
Okay, the current ratio, which is basically our current assets divided by our current liabilities. What that says is that the district, basically we compare current liabilities 4 times with our current assets. And the quick ratio is some of those current assets aren't necessarily convertible into cash. We wouldn't use them to pay our current liabilities. For instance, inventory is very much that way. Like prepaid insurance, we wouldn't do that. So if we take those out of the equation and then take what they're called quick assets, and we take and we do that same formula, we find that we compare current liabilities 3.9 times. The next one, the next 2 ratios on that page are solvency ratios, which is capital assets to long-term liabilities. What that says is that we have $4 of capital assets for every $1 of long-term liability. And the debt to equity ratio says that we have $3 of equity for every dollar of debt.
So really, what we look at those, what the board can see on a year-to-year basis is where we're trending. If you saw those quick ratios and you saw the other ones start to trend the other way, we'd be going the wrong direction. So we're continuing to have come through the whole turn down and very strong financial position is really what these numbers show.
Page 63 talks about the capital facility fees, capital projects, and long-term assets that we acquired in fiscal year 2013. The long-term assets that we acquired are very similar to prior years. And then the balance of the MD&A talks about items that we've taken into consideration as we go through the budget process, and just provides information about how someone, a user of the financial statements, can contact the district's financial management. As I said before, it was a very good year, and it's the result of prudent leadership from the board and from management, a philosophy of good stewardship of district resources practiced by district staff, and also a dedication on district staff to achieve the highest standards that we can. Bring David back at this point.
Any questions for Dave, for John? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. If I could, before David starts, the part that he's gonna be going through now is fairly detailed, so we can take that as fast or as slow as you want. That's up to you on how deep you want to get into the numbers, how many, we can go fast or slower, however that pleases the board.
I think, yes, Director?
And I have a question to ask, and only because I went to this training earlier this week, and it was very much about fiduciary responsibility of the board, and brought up things like Bell, California, they had auditors.
Yeah.
Roslyn, New York, they had auditors, and the auditors didn't see, because your responsibility is that the numbers you're given by staff are the numbers you're given by staff. You don't know if they're right or not, right? But you're just doing the general practices show they're right, and you do a brief little check. Like I noticed one of the things you came out with is an inventory item was off by 1,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that's a nut, a bolt,
Yeah, it was
or if it's a
that
water
was-
main.
Yeah, there was.
I have no
No,
idea.
that was very minor.
But that's like putting something on there just so we show we did our job. To me, it's like, I'll throw this on and just, with 2 screws off. You know, I'm just, what is your true responsibility down deep to this audit? That you're confirming the numbers that our management has given you, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
But from, I think last year, I think the same, similar question was brought up. Do I remember correctly that there are some standards with which you track, what's the right word? Items, so that you can see that they are within the norms, and if they are not, then you delve further into it? Or am I thinking of something else?
I don't know whether I would specifically say that. I guess what I would say that we approach our audit really from a risk-based standard, and that's how most auditors approach their audit. And so we look for areas that we think might be of risk. And so, for example, cash is just always going to be a risk area because it's susceptible to errors and frauds and such. So we take a close look at how cash comes in the door, how cash leaves the door, who has to approve a cash leaving the door, whether it's a check, whether it's a wire. We look at payroll. Of course, the city of Bell, one of the big things was payroll. And in terms of what was the auditor's responsibility there, I guess we as an audit, that we as auditors look at that situation there and say it's easy from an outsider's point of view to say that that was clearly fraudulent, that was wrong, but they were all pay rates that had been authorized by the board, and so we'll bring to your attention if we find things that we think are kind of outside the norm. Or, I mean, we do audit a lot of special districts, cities, so we do have that. So we do have that opportunity to see how a lot of different districts run. So if we see something that we think isn't functioning in a way that is kind of the normal out there, then we would bring that to your attention. But if something like a excessively high pay rate, if you guys came back to us and said, no, that's right, then you know, not too much more that we can audit to that end.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very good.
So if you could turn to page 65. So this is our statement of net position. Like I said, that it had previously been called a statement of net assets, and it had only been called that for about a decade or so, and then it was called a balance sheet before that. So then we keep on having tweaks with the names. But then in any case, this is your assets and liabilities, and you can see that the 2012 column says that it's restated, and this goes back to that GASB 65 implementation. So if you were to take a look at last year's audit, and then if you were to look at the 2012 column, that you would see a couple of numbers would be different. One of the things that you would see is that you would see those costs of issuance. So that's no longer here. So that's really the main difference. But then we're required to, because we did change the 2012 numbers from what we had previously reported in the prior year, that we're required to let you know that those are restated. One of the things that we do kind of as a final audit analysis, we do lots of looking at transactions and digging into individual balances, but then just to see if things make sense, that we like to look at the 2-year comparison here, and then just to look at how things compare between years. So I just want to point out a couple of things, and this will dovetail somewhat John said, that if you look at the first 3 lines, the cash, between the restricted cash, the unrestricted cash, then the investments, that if you add those 3 numbers up between 2013 and 2012, that you will get about a $15.4 million increase. When I get to the statement of cash flows in just a few moments, I'll kind of show you where that all came from. But just so kind of keep that in the back of your head. Next, when I go down the list, the accounts receivable under taxes and assessments was close to $1 million in the prior year, and then was only $95,000. That was just a timing issue, that you had received some tax money that during fiscal 12 that you didn't receive it until after the end of the year. Therefore, it was a receivable on the books during 2013. You actually got pretty close to the same amount of money, but you actually received it prior to the end of the year. So like sometimes these variances look a little deceiving. So I just wanted to let you know that that wasn't a function that you're receiving fewer tax, less tax money, but that was just a timing thing. But that's one of the things we look at. If you look at the next line down, and then I'm not going to go line by line. I just wanted to point out. I'm just going to point out just 1 or 2 things. So if you look at the receivable that's from other governmental entities, that you'll see it's $2.5 million in the current year, and then just above $500,000 in the prior year. This has to do with the Encina thing that I know a couple of you sit on the board, and then you all know that during this fiscal 13 year, Encina embarked on kind of a true-up of the ownership of the Phase 5 and the pre-Phase 5 assets, and then as a result of that, even though your districts, even though your ownership of Encina increased, you had actually been funding money in excess of that increase. So when it was all evaluated and trued up, that you actually had a receivable coming to you of about $2.2 million. There was a tangential study, I guess I would say, that looked at the operating costs based on the flows for the last 4 or 5 years, and then based on that, it was determined that you actually owed a little bit of money still for those past couple of years.
That's the timeout, that's done.
Oh, so like, am I done now?
Apollo 3.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
I might be wrong on my year. I believe last year, 2012, I believe,
Yeah.
we received a windfall RDA. Where does that show up?
Well, that's what part of the taxes and assessments is. That you
Page
received about the
66.
same amount of money
Yeah.
during
It's
fiscal.
page 66. Under non-operating revenues and expenses, the first line item. Without RDA, it's usually 1.6 million. But it just so happens, like Dave was saying, we got the same amount both years, which were 2 big years, and so the next year will be less. And the year before that was less. But these are the 2 big years.
So it wasn't a windfall per se, it was a distribution, it's just when we actually got the money.
Right.
Yeah, and then, I mean, from the city of San Marcos, that when the RDA issues from fiscal 12 happened, there was some delays in passing out that pass-through money, and so that's why there was a
Interest, it's all
receivable.
about the interest.
Huh?
It's all about the interest.
Yeah. So just going down further, just real quickly, under the non-current assets, you can see the investment in Encina capital assets decreased by about the same $2 million. So when that got adjusted, that's why there's a decrease there. Nothing much else I wanted to talk about here on this statement of net position. We can move on to the next page 66, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Again, we have the title change. And when I looked at the variances here, the only thing I wanted to point out was under the operating expenses, that about the 4th line down, that your Encina expense increased by about $700,000. About half that had to do with this adjustment made, and then the other half just had to do with increased usage during the year. But then you're likely to not see that large of a variance year to year that moving forward. And just if you look at the 3rd line from the bottom, that there's the prior period adjustment. It's in the 2012 column because we're required to restate the earliest year that we show. So had we only shown the 2013 year, then it would have been in the 2013 column. Statement of cash flows, page 66 and 67. I know John mentioned that he thought that was one of the more important statements. I think it was one of the least important statements, actually. I think that you're a accrual basis revenue and expenses that paints a much more true picture. But I just wanted to point out that I had said earlier that your cash and investments increased by about $15 million. So if you look at the cash from operations, you had $9.6 million. A few lines down, the receipts of taxes, $4.3 million, and then a few lines down, a bunch of those numbers get netted, but you issued $7 million worth of debt, so that was proceeds in. You spent $6.2 million to purchase capital assets, so there was a positive cash flow there of 1.4. So if you add those 3 numbers up, the 9.6 of the operations, the 4.7 of the taxes, and then the 1.4 of those other capital type of activities, that there's your $15 million increase increase in your cash. Just quickly on to the notes. Most of these notes just really spend more time elaborating on the numbers. I just wanted to point out a few things. If you turn to page 70, toward the bottom, you're going to see that we refer to the GASB 63 and 65 implementation several times during the course of the report. So there's the first one in the notes on the bottom of page 70 there. On the top of page 71, it talks about the GASB 65, goes into a little bit more detail about why we restated. In the middle of the page, it talks about pending accounting standards. There are always accounting standards coming down the road. I think that the one in that list, so then we listed GASB 66 through GASB standard 70 there, GASB 68, just to be aware of, that's the accounting for pensions, and that's gonna be, that's gonna hit your books in the year 2015. So then we have a couple of years, but that in short, that you're gonna have to show your unfunded liability is gonna be actually on your statement of net position.
Yeah, and if I can chime in there too, and there's a draft, so it's not a GASB yet, but with OPEB will follow as well.
Correct.
Pretty soon, and we'll have to show that, but we'll fully fund by then, so we won't even show the liability.
Yeah. So then it really won't affect the OPEB, really won't affect your statements much, but then the unfunded liability of the PERS will. And that's a very complicated GASB. It's 190 pages long. There's a lot to it, and then we're actually first learning about it too.
Victor?
Is that gonna be required at all levels, for cities and so on?
Yeah. Whether it's required on the state level, I don't know, but then all local governments, yeah.
Yeah.
Cities, special districts, school districts, yeah.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah. So I just wanted you to be aware that that's out there, that is gonna really change the look and feel of your statement of net position. Other than that, that we have notes talking about the cash and investments. That's on page. That starts on page 75. If there are any questions about any of these, I don't want to go into much detail about the notes. But then we have. Notes about your cash, notes about your capital asset activity during the year. We have notes about your debt activity during the year, including the issuance of your new debt. We have notes about your pension and OPEB activity during the year. If you jump back to page 92, that's where we show what we call a condensed set of statements, but then we break them into your water and sewer systems so that you're able to see where the assets, the liabilities, and then on the next page that shows the operations and the cash flows broken out between water and sewer. The only other thing, page 94.
Direct questions?
Yes.
Question, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it's here somewhere, I just don't see it. We saw the county tax collector earlier this week, and it was very interesting because they do a lot of investments themselves. Do we use them? Are we doing it ourselves, or?
We've got 5 million in the pool.
$5 million?
We're a voluntary participant. School districts have to participate in the pool. We're a voluntary one, and we've got about 5 million in their pool.
5 million out of, how much do we have invested?
Approaching 40 million, 36, 37 million.
What I really liked about his pool, and I think that's great that all school districts participate in that, is that money is reinvested locally,
Mhm.
San Diego County. So that means a lot to keep money here when you can.
Yeah. We're a pretty big participant. Compared to the other participants in the pool, we're relatively, the 5 million's a lot, compared to the other districts in there.
Yeah, keeping invested locally is just, it was so important when he explained how they do that. I went, wow, that's, hopefully all districts do it. It would be a boom to the economy.
I think one of the balances there is that it does have a pretty low yield. I mean, not that there's anything that really has a very high yield these days, but that it has a pretty low yield.
If I might, Director Martin, next board meeting, you'll actually be getting the investment policy that shows where we fund the money. It's an annual that we bring to the board for update, and it shows the limits, the minimum and the maximum of any type of investment we can put by fund. So you'll actually, at the next board meeting on the 12th, get a very detailed presentation on that.
Thank you.
Just real quickly to jump to page 90, to page 94, and then, again, not to point out anything new, but then we have a note 17 there, again, talking about the implementation of GASB 65, talking about the restatement of the prior, that of the 2012 column, so we explain it there as well. I had no other comments on the statements or the notes. We did issue 2 other letters that were issued in conjunction with the audit. So if there's any other questions on the statements and the notes, then I can field those now, or else I can just move on quickly to the final 2 letters.
I think moving on.
Okay. Turn to your board packet on page 104, and we are required. There's an auditing standard that requires us to communicate certain things to the board having to do with the audit. So early on in the audit that we did talk to the board about, we talked about the planned scope of the audit and the timing of the audit. So now this is the results portion of the audit. Under the significant audit findings, I just actually wanted to point you to the final 2 sentences of that first page that we noted no transactions entered into by the district during the year for which there's a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus, and that all significant transactions have been recognized in these statements in the prior period. So we just want to let you know that was the case. If you turn to your page 105, that we do point out that the audit does have some estimated numbers. John talked about the fair market value of your investments, that's an estimate made, the useful life of your capital assets, so then we do write those off over a certain number of years, so that goes into an expense of the current year. But I mean, truthfully, you don't know how long an asset really will or won't last. So like, there's no way to pinpoint with complete accuracy there. And then also what the annual required contributions are for your pension and your OPEB, that those are actually based on valuation studies done, and then of course those are based on discount rates and then inflation rates, so those are not exact numbers either. So whereas some of the numbers really are very exact numbers, that like the amount of cash you have, the amount of investments that you have, there are certain numbers in these statements that are just estimates made, so then I wanted to point that out to you. Bottom of page 6, that we had no difficulties during the course of the audit. Top of page 106, we did have a few journal entries during the course of the audit, and then some were really between your capital projects and whether they whether projects should be expensed versus capitalized. So then we met with staff, and then we actually went project by project, and then we kind of filtered that through. So there were a few journal entries there. Probably the biggest one there is D, and that has to do with Encina again, and then we already spoke about that. But then there was a fairly large journal entry to book the receivable of the 1.8 million, and then the expense of 363,000. We had no disagreements with management. Thank you very much. Audit went very well. Down in the last paragraph there, sometimes we'll have situations that where your management here doesn't like what we have to say, so then they go and get a second opinion. They'll contact another accounting firm. That we kind of frown on that, but that did not happen. We just have to state that didn't happen. The last page of this of this letter, page 107, just talks about that we had no real audit findings. We did have a couple of very small things that like I'll mention right at the very end, but then none that gave rise to that really have to be reported to USA Board. So that's our required communications letter. And the final letter that I have is on your board packet, page 108 and 109. We call this a other comments letter, and it's really not meant for your eyes, and then it's not to say that you shouldn't see it, but these are small issues that we had during the course of the audit that we brought to your management, but they felt that they just wanted to show everything that we gave you guys should see. So we had two small comments there. One of them had to do with passwords. We think that you can strengthen your internal control systems if you require password changes. And then the other, the inventory director, Martin, you already mentioned that was that we had a few count issues, but they all got resolved except for one. And then we met with your staff to talk about maybe ways to improve the count process. So that was really why we put that comment in there. It wasn't so much that we were missing a widget. It was that we felt that there could be some improvements done on your counting process. So that is my report for the year 2013. If there are any questions, I can take them now, or otherwise, thank you again for having us as your auditor.
Director Evans?
I would just like to make a comment. I was at a leadership academy and we spent a great deal of time on audits. Had I not done that, probably I'd looked through it and I would not have understood it very well. I felt like that helped me, but I want to say thank you to our staff and to you, because in your explanation, I appreciate that you showed specific differences and where they came from. And I feel like I have an understanding. I don't know it will last very long, but thank you. It's very well done. And
You're very
I do
welcome.
appreciate our staff and the board's decisions that have supported in the past.
Director Martin?
A quick question to staff on the process, because it happened 4 years ago. What was the process where the board hired the auditors to do their job? Very similar to what they did 4 years ago. And it's a 5-year contract.
Yeah, we get, a lot of times throughout the year, we'll get letters. David, close your ears for a second. We'll get letters from other auditors too, so when we keep usually what we'll do, we'll go out to bid, and a lot of times we'll survey other districts. Who are you using? We just got a survey question from Alevinain. Who is your top 3? So we'll shortlist to an extent so we don't have so many to go through. And then we narrow it down and then bring it to the board and say, these are our recommendations to bring in these firms maybe for an interview. And that's what we did last time. We bring them in for an interview and then come to you for the final on the top 3.
Go ahead, no.
Who did the interview?
Me, Tom.
Oh, I was in it? Okay, yeah, me.
We interviewed the top firms. What happened last time was we had one firm, I think it was a 3-year contract, and it was 5. 5 years.
5 year.
We got to the end and we were moving forward with renewal. When we talked to the board, we came back and recommended, you've had the same auditor, let's get a new auditor. So we actually did bring in, I think we had 5 firms that submitted. We shortlisted 3, interviewed them, then brought the proposals back to the board with a recommendation. It's usually a multiple year contract with a
2-year extension.
2-year extension.
3.
That can be moved to, I think it's 2.
3-year with a 2 extension.
3-year with 2-year extension for a 5-year total. And at the end of that term, we would go through the same process and bring it back to the board. There's some very definite, distinct benefit to having a multi-year contract. The first year of an audit for a new firm is a massive learning process of staff, time, and everything else. So we do get some benefit of subsequent years being a little more cost-effective because they already understand the district and we understand each other and how to move forward. But any way it goes, it always comes back to the board for notifial of the audit itself.
Do districts vary that much that when you have auditors and you have the first year an auditor comes in, but they already do special districts, does it really vary that much in pricing? Because I think they had the recommendation much lower at the academy as to how many years you should keep them.
It could be some, I think 3 years is a very common, I can,
Okay.
yeah, David
5
answers
is the,
that.
is the.
5 is a very
common
common duration of contracts. Again, it's a 3-year with a 2-year, if you're satisfied. As far as the agencies being similar, you can probably speak that a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that you're right to a point, but then every agency is a little different. So there's a learning curve, not just for us as, not for us as auditors, and then because it's a fixed fee, maybe you guys really don't care about the learning curve that us as auditors have. But there's a bit of a learning curve on your staff side, that we need to understand who does what. So the first year of an audit tends to be a little bit more probing, because we need to understand who do we need to talk to for us to find the correct information. So to change an auditor every like 1 or 2 years, then you would be putting your staff through a lot of the same process over and over again. And then, yeah, you're right, most of the contracts we sign are 3 years with an option for 2 additional years. We do have some agencies and cities where we've gone out further than that, gone out to 7 years, but several are 5-year contracts with, well, the 3 plus 2.
Well, this is the first one I've seen here, just want to make a comment that, very nice report, very well done. We could pick and choose what we need to talk about and didn't hold you up too long.
Tom's actually gonna send you guys an email out if anybody wants to come in and go through it in detail. We're more than happy to take you through for a few hours.
And I would like to do that.
Okay.
Tom, you said it went out to bid. Was it first a request for qualifications, then a proposal, or was it a request for proposal?
RFP.
It was an RFP, and then from there you shortlisted, and are we required to take the lowest responsible
No.
proposal?
In this case, I don't believe we actually
No,
did.
we're not.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
very good, all right. Yes.
One last thing, I would like to see, if possible, that the finance committee be part of this selection committee, only because ultimately it is our responsibility.
Sure.
It just makes sense that they're part of it. And I think I'm on it, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that's a
We
good
don't have
idea.
those meetings.
Sure.
Any further questions? I would,
Recommendation is just note and file.
just note and file. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
And just a last comment, there's a lot of talk about GASBs, and when I was in the business too, even at our holiday parties, we continue to talk about GASBs, and they were pretty wild, those parties. I
Oh, yeah.
wish you were there.
You accountant types just
I was gonna write down
rock.
finance committee, and I wrote down finance party.
I realize how fun it must be.
Yeah.
You're talking about the great Gatsby for a while there.
Well, there you go. Let's move ahead.
Thank you.
2.3, the legislative policy guideline resolution.
I'll go through this very quickly. If you read it, where this came from was, you've all been to Aqua, you've been to CASA, you see all the position papers that all these agencies that work on our behalf to look at policies, they give us a lot of guidance. So we're always in pretty good shape as to where we're headed. The trick on some of these is that you've seen the legislative process where there can be an assembly bill or a Senate bill that's gone through the whole committee process, and the day it gets to the very end, they gut it, they replace it. We had a lot of that this past year. So we'll get last-minute phone calls or emails from Aqua, CASA, CSDA, WEF, the Water Authority, you name it. We'll suddenly get this barrage of phone calls or emails asking for support or opposition to a bill. Several years back, this was directed by the board to move forward and develop a policy. It slipped through the cracks of it being done. So what I did this past year was took several agencies, the Water Authority, they just most recently, I think the last board meeting, you adopted the annual update. Took theirs, cut it way back compared to what the Water Authority looks at. I added a section on construction law that wasn't in the previous version of the Water Authority. Added a section on human relations and employment issues so that we can stay up to speed. So really, it's kind of a guideline that also follows the strategic plan of the board in the 8 focus areas, which is to make sure that we can control things locally, alternative water supplies, keep things cost effective and everything else. So you've got a 20-page document there that's very global, in the things that it makes statements on. It wasn't intended to be specific. It was intended just to be a general guideline document for the district, to where if something does come up, and if they ask for a letter from the district, it's pretty hard to pull the board together to get consensus of the board as a majority. So what the intent of the policy is that these are general guidelines, staff can move forward with the support or opposition letter, and then at the next board meeting, we would actually bring that to the board. We could email it to the board, whatever the case may be. Bless you, Jim. Bless you. So what you do have before you, again, is a fairly lengthy document. I have a feeling this is just part of just good management and good board policy, public policy. This will be the same thing. It'll come back before the board on an annual basis because things change all year. There's some items in here that will actually come out of here already because they've already been dealt with legislatively, so they'll come off the list. So what you have today, again, is just a policy for consideration by the board recommendation. If the board does want to keep this and you're bored and you want to read up on it over the next couple of weeks, bring it back at the December 12th. Maybe you have some input or questions. That's fine. It's not a time-sensitive issue as far as getting it approved, unless the board chooses to move forward today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Consensus as to whether we want to adopt this today or to take a longer look at it?
Move to approve as far as I'm
Yes.
Well, I took a look at it and I didn't see anything that was objectionable about it.
Very good. I
It's
have a
pretty
motion.
standard. This is a roll call.
Yes, it is. But I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Also moved it.
We already have a motion. Was that a second, Mr. Poe?
Okay, second.
Okay, very good. We have a motion and a second. This is a resolution, so it will be a roll call. But yes, the discussion.
My question simply is, I did read through it and I agree, I don't see anything objectionable, but if I should look through it later and find something, do I come to you first?
Just send me an email if you want clarification or if it's
And
something
then
that
if
you
there's-
think we need to change in the future.
Then it comes to the board?
Yeah.
At intent?
Yeah,
Okay,
no
that was
problem.
it, thank you.
Very good. A motion and a second. Roll call, Diane.
This will be resolution 1435. Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Ferguson?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Poe?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
good. Item 2.4, project acceptance of the 12-inch fail-safe replacement.
I think we've got Ken for the next couple of items.
Well, then just stay up here, Ken.
I'll do that, thank you.
Will you be changing outfit?
I'll roll up my sleeves.
Okay.
And what happened to your usual minions that you have here instead of you? Usually you have.
James?
James here.
Everybody's gone.
James, yeah, he
Said the
had
heck-
stayed, got up early and,
Different.
James had a rough weekend.
Yeah,
and
Not that I only care for you, too, but it's just, usually he's the one that has to sit here, you know, short timer.
we gave him a couple hours off. This project is the acceptance of the 12-inch fail-safe project on Red Wing Street. Last board meeting, James brought before you the change order and the request for budget increase, which was approved at that time. We were waiting for final acceptance to get clearance from the county for repaving of Red Wing Street. We since have received that clearance and approval. So this is the project acceptance, the total budget, and the items that were part of that budget are shown in the staff report. And the recommendation is to accept the project, file notice of completion, and authorize the release of retention funds to the contractor after a 30-day notice period.
We have a motion
That's-
and a second. Any questions?
Question.
I have a question first. Who are you going to address? Doesn't matter.
By all means, go ahead.
Ken, this is a fail-safe system. Is it replacing a fail-safe system?
No,
Was
this,
it fail-safe before because it didn't work?
it was, remember as James explained, that the water or the sewer line was duct line pipe, so it was prone to corrosion over time. And it took a number of vertical and also horizontal bends to go around the utilities that were out there. And we did have a few corrosion issues, both from the soil conditions and probably from some of the utilities that were out there, namely the SDG&E gas lines and things like that tend to throw off a current. And it's just, we've been replacing things out there a number of times, and my construction crew will really thank you that we got this done, because they're tired of going out there on Christmas Eve and fixing it.
If I could, just explain what the fail-safe terminology is. Again, to go back in time, when the board first approved and built the Metal Arc expansion in 81, it was started in 78, finished in 81. You had to have either storage, wet weather storage of 90 days, or you had to have a fail-safe pipeline. Fail-safe meaning if everything goes bad on you, you're full production, it's raining, your storage is full, you have to have somewhere to send it. Hence, it's the fail-safe. So when they first built the treatment plant, we were rated at 600,000 gallons per day. You had to have 90 days of wet weather storage, hence that's the reason Mar Reservoir was built, which is 54 million gallons. 90 times 60 is the 54 million. But we wanted to go beyond that and sell more water, so what happened was the developer, Dayon and Anding Group, that developed all of La Costa, they had to build this fail-safe line, so they had to take it from the treatment plant all the way to the coast. So really what it is, it's a fail-safe in case the storage is full, the treatment plant's running at full capacity, it's raining, and there's a herd of elephants coming through town. We have somewhere to put the water. That's really what the fail-safe line is.
But we use it now, even when you're not in a fail-safe condition.
We use it only if there's two purposes. Because we're a tertiary treatment plant, I don't know if you remember when you were down there, there's one pump station at the very top on the secondaries. Okay, if we get to the point where we're not selling water to Carlsbad or Liebenhain, we don't need it. What we do is we don't send it through the whole filtration process, which is the Title 22. We take it from there and we send it down to fail-safe and we dump it straight to the ocean. So it allows us operationally, don't waste the money creating water that you're not gonna sell.
So that's why the fail-safe's in use.
That's why it's in use, yeah.
Okay.
Or,
Thank you.
so it serves a lot of reasons, which is literally, if something goes bad, you have somewhere to put the water.
Thank you.
Director Evans, you had a question?
Thank you, I've had my question answered.
Oh, very good, thank you. Any further questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. 2.5, upon acceptance of Richland Tank Number 1.
Thank you. This is one of the tanks up on Richland Hill, off of Richland Road, that periodically we repair and we recoat and we paint these tanks. This one was refurbished this fiscal year, it was in the budget, and the projects have been completed. We had one change order, two change orders, or change orders that created a credit actually, because we had got to remove the dehumidification from the contract. That's a costly expense, and we had some good weather, so we didn't have to dehumidify. So that's in the list of the budget summary there. You'll see a $21,000 change order credit, and that's what that was, the bulk of that credit. At the time, it also allowed the district crews to perform a lot of the upgrades and repairs to the site, including the electrical and SCADA system and replacing a couple valves. So we got quite a bit of work done for this project, and it was very successful, came in under budget. The recommendation is to accept the project, file notice of completion, and authorize release of the retention funds to the contractor after the 30-day notice period. It says within, but it's after the 30-day notice period, provided there's no claims.
Do you have any questions? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. I
Yes.
have one question.
You do have a question, two questions.
And it's one question. It just, on the budget, I want to be sure, and we have this under budget credit, 18,000. Where does that money go now? Back to, we didn't spend it. Does that go into capital improvement?
It's in the reserves. Reserves is kind of like, sometimes we call reserves residual.
Okay.
You know, if we did a better year and then we budgeted, boom, then the reserves are a little higher than we anticipated. If we have to take more out, then it's.
So this goes to reserves and we could use it for whatever we needed in that reserve pocket. It's not assigned to some specific.
No.
Has to, okay.
It's
thank you. That
on
was
the
my-
water side, so we're kind of halfway on there. Like the sewer side, we had rate stabilization money, which was wonderful.
Right.
We're not quite there yet in water, so it's not a huge impact if we have extra money, because we're not all the way there in water.
I got it. I thought for a minute we had to set it in a fund that would only go
No.
for like painting another tank.
No, it does have to stay with water.
It stays with
Okay.
water, but it's
Right.
in reserves. Thank you.
Director Martin?
Ken, could you, someone give me a little history on Richland tank number 1 and number 2? When were they built? What size are they? And why is there 1 and 2?
Okay, Richland tank number 1, that's the smaller one with the yellow circle around it.
Right.
That was built, I want to say, 1968. The bulk of it was called the arterial water supply when the district was first formed. We sold most of our general obligation bonds, 65 through 68. That built most of the background water supply, of which that tank was the first one. That's 1.25 million gallons.
I believe so.
At least 1.25 million gallons. That's one of the smaller ones we have. The bigger one to the northeast, that's a 7 million gallon. And that was built in 1978. And that was just part of the expansion of the district that we project water growth and storage. So you can tell obviously a big difference in size between the two of them. The Richland tank number 2 was also sized when they built the project up on Emerald Heights. When they built the project up at the top, we build in what they call 4-bay storage. So when you have a pump station that pumps to somewhere, you need to make sure there's water committed for that pump station. So part of the capacity in that when it was built was oversized to accommodate the Emerald Heights project. It's about 1 million gallons.
Pump water from that one
Then we pumped
up to the
top.
tank.
So that part was actually reimbursed through the capacity fees that the developer paid because it was included in their requirements. So on average, you figure, they used to coat the old tanks on the interior with what they called super tank solution, meaning the super tankers, the oil super tankers. It was a petroleum-based product that when you put it on, it looked like just goop, big runs in it and everything else. It has since been outlawed because it held the petroleum vapors in it. The bad part is the new paint systems last 10+ years. The old paint systems lasted 30+. So we end up painting them about every 10 years now instead.
I do remember during the tour, we actually stopped at.
We stopped at that one.
Number 2, didn't we? But we didn't stop.
We stopped at the big one, we didn't walk around the corner to the little one. Yeah.
Is it the same elevation?
They're both the tanks are always at the same elevation and the same height, just the diameter changes.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. 2.6, rejection of construction.
Mr. Scholl, speak to this one, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, President Hernandez, members of the board. Just real quick to kind of show how exhausted James was today, by the way. We went out to lunch today, and he left his cell phone on the table, completely oblivious to it. So as I'm driving away here after lunch, I had the waiter just sprinting out of the restaurant and into the parking lot, chasing my car down with his phone in his hand, just waving, "Here, you forgot this." So yeah, James is a little exhausted today. Okay, on to Linda Vista Sewer here. On October 30th, we opened bids for the construction of the Linda Vista Sewer project. We received 7 bids. They ranged from about $1.58 million to $2.46 million, with Dick Miller Incorporated, or DMI, turning in the lowest bid. So based on that we went through our process where we do check their references. Here we have legal counsel review the bids as well and all the documentation. And as of course we're going through this process, on November 6th, DMI does send notice to the district that they are requesting bid relief. And the reason for that is they stated that there was a certain bid item here. Particularly it's the 15-inch pipeline bid item that they put in a $165 per linear foot unit cost for that. And they say it should have been a $195 per linear foot unit cost. So when you multiply that $30 difference by almost 3,000 feet, you come to a $98,400 discrepancy in their bids here. So basically that left us 2 options here, what DMI could do. They could either go with their original bid price that they actually submitted of about $1.58 million, or they could opt for bidder's relief, which would disqualify their bid and also disqualify them for any rebidding that would occur on this particular project. We spoke with DMI on that. They were fine with taking bidder's relief on this. And so we started looking at the next bidders going down the list there. The second bidder, unfortunately here, we did have some issues with demonstrated work experience in their bid. And with the third bidder, we did have some issues here with them not providing all required documentation. We had a couple addendums that went with the construction documents, and the signed addendums were not included in their bid package. So if we're going all the way to the fourth bid by CC&L Contracting at about $2,030,000 in change. At this point here, we're looking at approximately a $450,000 difference between their bid and DMI's bid of $1.58 million. That's a difference in price of approximately 30%. We believe if we rebid this project, we would get a much better price than that $2,030,000. We've revised our estimate, our engineer's estimate, taking the addendums into account, and it's approximately $1.8 million. We believe that we get a much more narrow, more collective set of bids as well. Hopefully not the disbursement that we've seen here with the original bids. So based on that, staff and legal counsel would recommend that the board reject all construction bids received for the Linda Vista Sewer project and authorize staff to re-advertise the project for public bid. And with that, I'd love to answer questions.
Director Martin.
DMI, even with the $90,000 to $100,000, say $100,000 hit, would be 1.677, which is going to be below your estimate, and is also still below any of the other bidders.
But statutorily, they're not allowed to do that.
We can't do that.
You can't allow them.
So my question was, are they not allowed to do that?
Correct. As outlined by Mr. Scholl, they have two options. They can honor their original price, or they can seek the relief under the public contract code. They opted for the second. That carries with it the sanction that they're not allowed, if the project goes to rebid, they have to stand on the sidelines, and that's what they're agreeable to do.
Yeah, we can, if I could very quickly, we can, and you've probably seen it before, if we find minor irregularities in the bid, like they had the total number right, but their quantities were wrong, or they just extended something, but it doesn't change the bid. If they had something written down incorrectly, that's immaterial. What we do is, the recommendation is normally to ask the board to waive the irregularities and then award the bid. But we can't add money after the fact. It's called job shopping, is basically what it is. It would be if you can imagine if you were the low bidder, oh man, I blew it. I left $300,000 on the table. You send in a protest. This is where I think I screwed up. Now I'm going to do the job. So that's why we can't add the money. The protection to the district so that they don't play that game is that when they waive their right to build it, they also waive the right to rebid it. So they're basically taking themselves out of the bid. The other reason we think we got the very big spread here, Fowler is actually doing the tunnel in the other project for us right now. This project does include several trenchless techniques, so it does take some pretty good contractors to do the project. Talking to Fowler, he's busy, which means they'll bid it, but they're going to put a lot of money on it to make it worth their while to come in and do it. So what we're seeing is our bids are starting to creep up pretty quick. Contractors are busy on public works projects, so we're starting to see some increased prices.
Yeah, we did hear that actually from several contractors, actually.
Director Evans?
Well, I just wanted to ask, you said that because the second and third one don't qualify for various reasons, we're going to deny the bid, or whatever the word was, reject the bids totally.
Yes.
We're going to offer another chance, and another advertisement. So the first one can't rebid it because they're out legally, now that they've asked that option.
Yes.
So were you saying we're going to change our description of what we're seeking in order to tighten the number of people and who are responding? You said something, you were changing something that you thought would bring the numbers in closer, and I didn't understand, and if so, can you do that? Can you say, I don't like any of my bids, and I'm gonna?
What we're gonna do, actually, the only thing we're going to do is, two things. We're going to update the engineer's estimate, and that's based on 2 addendums that we attached to the construction documents here. Basically, the addendums are a little bit of clarification.
Okay.
They're based on the questions that we received from the contractors during a pre-bid meeting that took place about 3 weeks before the actual bid opening. And so it helps us clarify any issues there that contractors may have, take that into consideration. So we're gonna incorporate those changes now into the construction documents. So now there won't be any addendums with the new set of construction documents, unless of course during the new pre-bid meeting, contractors bring up more questions,
Right.
which typically does happen, by the way, so we might get new addendums that come out. But that's what we mean by, we're gonna.
When you were, yes, so you're hoping it won't be so widespread because you've got most of those concerns already addressed, although more could come up.
Exactly,
Okay,
yes.
and that just sounded, when you first said it, I thought that didn't sound exactly legal either, so, thank you.
I've got a couple of questions relative to the rebid process. If it is dramatically changed, could the DMI group rebid it? Or as long as it's this project in any way, shape, or form, they are excluded?
The latter.
Oh, very good. And then what was the original engineer's estimate on the project?
The original estimate was actually $1.63 million. There was a couple things. One, there had to be a little bit of update on the actual big item quantities. That was part of the addendums that I was talking about earlier. And the other thing we did too is we brought the project cost up to current day. It was a little bit dated, actually. It was, I think, back in April, the last time that it was actually updated. And so costs have increased slightly since then.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing on some of the other projects. People are just flat out saying, hey, we're busy. We're gonna bid it tall.
Yeah, the other thing we'll look at is whenever we get more complicated projects, we'll look around the county and see if there's any other agency that's bidding a similar project. We don't wanna go head-to-head with somebody else, so we'll look into that to make sure we're not bidding. There's sometimes, if there's 3 jobs bidding on one day, the contractor just picks the one they wanna bid and they throw money at the other one. So it's kind of a crapshoot when you get a busy environment.
Yes.
I know this doesn't matter coming to play, it's strictly the lowest bidder, but are there people on here we've done business with before?
Yes, actually, CCL, we've done work with Charles King. They're doing the bypass pumping down at Meadowlark. They did all that for us. They did a great job. We worked with CCL, Vallecitos? I don't think we've ever worked with them. Utah Pacific has done 3 projects for us, I think, and done an excellent job. And then Fowler's doing the other work for us, right? So we got some good quality bidders that know how to do the project. So hopefully we get them to come back and rebid.
Thank you.
Yes, the Director Podel.
Yeah, I think anybody who's done contracting has been in this predicament, so I think we're really fortunate that this isn't a time-sensitive project, and so you've got time to throw it back in the mix and come back out again. Where you really get tricky is when it is time-sensitive, and then you've got to go to those marginal areas, the second, third, and fourth bidder, and it becomes pretty frustrating.
Right, yeah. We know the city is, they do have a project that they're lining up right after us because it deals with what we call the hotel property there off of Veracruz. But we do feel that, yeah, even with this rebidding, the timing's gonna be fine.
Good.
I did have a question on this relief. Do we have the option to accept the relief, or can we just say, too bad, you're the guy?
Well, there are certain criteria that have to be met, and if you meet those criteria, you as the contractor are entitled to that relief. They focus that under, in their argument, as I understand this, was mathematical error, clerical error, and they demonstrated it at least to staff satisfaction. Well, yes, that appears to be the case. And so premised on that, they are entitled to the relief, they also had the option, they could have said, you know what, we'll live by our bid, we'll suck it up and eat this $80,000, and we'll honor our original price, but that rarely happens. If you make an error of this size,
Yeah.
the contractor wants out. And as an agency, you want them out too, because as a practical matter, you're gonna fight tooth and nail with them all the way through that project for every nickel and dime extra they can get out of it in a change order or project dispute or whatever extra they can find, because they're gonna try and make that difference up on you.
Any further questions? Yes.
Out of curiosity, is it the same size sewer line?
It's an
Eight-
increase in size, actually. It goes from an 8-inch existing pipeline, the new line will be 15-inch.
Under the freeway?
Yes, it is a 15-inch under the freeway as well.
All the way down to Las Posas.
Mhm.
You know, Las Posas, believe it or not, it ties into the sewer that went in when Paloma went in. And that's where it gets bigger there, because we knew long-term this is where it was gonna tie in to the future. So this is a project where, again, you asked earlier where the money came from on the 7.1 million. So the 8-inch pipe gets replaced and funded from reserves, replacement money, and the 7 million pays to make it go from 8 to 15.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Entertain a motion to reject the construction bid.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
2.7,
Rob, sorry.
the Aqua election of officers.
Yes, you may recall, I think it was 2 months ago, you had the approved aqua slate that came before the board. We supported the aqua slate of officers as presented. The only reason this is before you here today, and we'll fix this next year, when we go through assignment of people who act on our behalf. We don't actually have anybody identified to vote on behalf of Vallecitos at the aqua conference. So all this is before you today is for the board to give direction to who you want to cast the vote on behalf of Vallecitos.
So we have to name somebody.
We initially were thinking about doing it just as the chair, because you'd be there, but when I looked at it, it's not stated anywhere, so I just wanted to get clarification from the board on who could cast the vote.
Very good. So,
I'll throw out the motion that we designate President Hernandez to
Second.
vote for us.
Well, would that be Hernandez, would it be the chair?
Pardon?
Would it be the chair?
it's,
Does this happen?
oh, yeah.
Well, the ballots are due on December 10th. When's the organizational meeting?
Oh,
Next
okay.
month.
So it will be President.
It would be President Hernandez. And again, I'd recommend when we go through it in the future for defining officers, we'll make clarification, because the Aqua Board is for 2 years. So you won't have to deal with this again for 2 more years.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed what you were asking me, Director Pohl.
That's fine.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. 2.8, the Urban Water Conservation Council.
Yes, this is, you've all heard it. You heard it from us in what we call BMP 11, which is the best management practice that they support as far as how we fund. And whenever Tom describes how we set the water rates, they want 70% to be on commodity, no more than 70% on fixed. So this is a guidance agency that provides the water industry with the guidance. We were one of the original signers of the action that created this group way back when. They do go through an annual term of electing their officers. This came before the board last year, and I think the year before, I don't think the board took action then either. Last year, no action was taken on behalf of the board towards the vote. If you do go to page 148 of the ballot, you do see the people there. Jason Foster is the representative. I don't know the other representatives, so what we have before you today could either be the board take no action as we did last year and just let their elections go through their normal process, or if you did want to actually vote for somebody, I would recommend that we do nominate Jason Foster.
Is there a desire on the board?
You said you recommended, Jason?
If the board wants to, actually, before you today, I would say take no action, but if the board did want to nominate somebody, I would say Jason Foster.
If I may, I would be very pleased if we would support Jason Foster, because I am very impressed with him on the San Diego County Water Authority. I'm not familiar with Tim Barr or Joe Berg. I feel Jason certainly deserves our support.
I would concur that we need to vote. Jason is good as anyone else, but I'd rather abstain from a vote. We don't like people in the community to do that when we're running for elections, so I think we do need to take a position.
Sure.
Second, Jason.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to recommend Jason Foster be the representative. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Great, thank you.
Very good. Item 2.9, conducting the business of the board, per Director Evans.
I'm passing out
Oh,
another one. Oh, okay.
oh, okay. That's all
You threw me
right.
off on that one.
We got them all here.
Yeah, it's in the board packet as well.
Actually, it wasn't in the board packet. Yeah.
What are the differences between these three?
It was in the
Well,
board
one
packet.
of them, the one in the packet, I
Yeah.
believe is the
Yeah,
correct
The
one.
one in the board packet is correct.
And
She
the-
accidentally, she was trying to give you a hard copy earlier, but she
So
gave you the
I
wrong
can give you
one.
186 back?
The earlier
The one on the packet is
186,
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, one in the packet is
Yeah,
correct.
all right, sorry,
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've had questions about policy practices and procedures regarding ordinance 189 since the beginning of the year, but I've been uncertain as to when and how to address them, so I have kept putting them off. However, I just attended the California Special Districts Leadership Academy Conference and got my diploma. One of the points that was reiterated throughout the program was the importance of clear, precise policy statements and the necessity of reviewing them often to ensure that the board procedures and actions were indeed meeting the policy expectations and that policy's expectations continue to meet the district's needs. So with this in mind, I would like you to address your attention to page 152 or page 3 in the handout. And would like to talk about section 19, board reorganization, and specifically part B. And that is, in addition to the minimum reorganization requirement, board policy determines that the board will reorganize annually to provide that each elected director will have the opportunity to hold the office of president once during their 4-year term. The president serves at the pleasure of the board. The way I see that, I feel the policy statement is very simple and precise. There are 3 objectives. The board directors will take turns holding the office of president. A director will serve as president for 1 year at the pleasure of the board. And 3, each elected director will have the opportunity to serve once during their 4 terms. And I think those are very clear and fair policy statements. In this ordinance, however, there's no description of the procedure to be used to achieve that goal. There's no mention or description of the office of vice president, and there's no statement that the vice president will automatically become the president. Now, I understand, and this is where I get confused, that historically and traditionally, the board has followed the procedure, if I have it right, that the office of president rotates through the seating arrangement of the directors following, I guess you'd call a left to right progression, with the vice president automatically becoming the new president. Following this procedure, the directors at the moment we would advance through the office of president would be Director Ferguson, Director Podol, myself, and then Director Martin.
Thank you very much.
It's Doctor of Trouble, I'm sure. Unless, however, Dr. Martin runs for re-election and succeeds, he will not have had the opportunity to serve as president during his 4-year term. And that's my concern. To me, that goes completely against the goal of the policy and as written. Now, I realize there are 5 directors and there's only 4 years. per term. So one may say that invariably one director will be left out of the loop. In reality, that's not really the full story, because there's actually the terms stagger, and there's 6 years for 5 directors. Now, if you are reelected over and over, you can get that little bit bundled up, but I'm going to just go on the fact that there are 6 years for 5 directors to be president. Because the board member terms are staggered, and we have that opportunity, I think the key word to me in this policy as written is the word elected director. Each of the board members is elected once to a 4-year term. After that, if one remains on the board, you are reelected. So I interpret that to mean the first 4 years someone in his office, because that's all you're guaranteed anyway. So if we focus on the word elected, it is easy to see how each elected board member can be given the opportunity to serve as president in their first term of office, and how the re-elected or appointed members can accommodate that as new board members, come on board. Sound nervous? So my objective in bringing this forward has nothing to do whatsoever with personalities or who is or is not president or vice president, except if you are an elected board member. I read the policy to mean you should have an opportunity to be president once in that first term. So I would like a discussion to clarify and reaffirm this ordinance, section 19, part B, that those are the goals, as I've stated, and then to determine a mutually acceptable process that will ensure that both Director Martin and myself will have an opportunity to serve in the office of president within our 4-year term, which would end at the end of 2016. And also to consider doing away with the use of the seat rotation or automatic replacement of the president by the vice president, as I'm not sure this procedure, I feel this procedure actually hinders achieving the ordinance's goal as stated. So I thank you, and I'd love to hear anyone's comments or discussion.
Well,
Yes, sir. Jump right in.
So I've been on a few boards, and school district in particular, and this one. And they've all operated the same. And while it may not be completely spelled out here, your interpretation, which is about elected, there's also a word in there called opportunity, which is an opportunity. So when on the school district board, I know they do that. It rotates as you get a seat, and you just get in line, and you may or may not make it, depending on what happens. So you just get in line, and it just rotates on up. I think that is probably the fairest way to go, because you don't have to rely on getting votes from your other board members. You're going to get a seat depending upon where you are in your position on the dais. And so with that, it kind of takes out the competition, the divisiveness that may be on the board, takes that completely out of the picture, and you just know that rotation is going to happen that way. It also gives a person who may not feel, and by the way, anybody who doesn't want to accept a position can deny it. They can say, I really don't want to do that, and that could be a cooperative thing as well. I'm trying to think of where else I was going with that, but I think that's kind of the main idea, and it also takes away anything having to do with the majority vote or power, because you give that person an opportunity to be the chair. And then you automatically give that person the right to make decisions, because that's about all the chair can do. The chair can decide who's going to be on what committee, who's going to be this and that and the other, and it's always been a tradition. So anyway, I don't see any reason to change it just for those things I was talking about.
Pardon, I missed the last sentence.
I said, from my own point of view, I don't see a reason to alter it at this point.
Yes, Director Barton.
I too have served on numerous boards and different things. As far as having to change seats and do the hokey pokey every year, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. The chairman should sit in the middle, but, you know, sit where you want to sit, don't have this sustained thing. B actually expressly implies that in the case that I am in, that if you should run an election against the chairperson and win, you will not have the opportunity to serve as the chairperson, because that was the last chairperson in 4 years of the other 4 people. So in this particular case, if B is held, as I believe it should be, it means that I would have the opportunity to hold the office of the president. As it stands right now, I do not have that opportunity because it is already written out. It'll go from Jim Hernandez to Margaret Ferguson to Jim Podol to Betty Evans, and then it'll be another election year. So I will not have that opportunity. So I appreciate that Betty brought it up. Not to mention, I believe in open elections, but just on that one part, item B actually disqualifies me. It doesn't, it's there, it tells me I have the opportunity, but the way you do it says I won't have the opportunity. What it does say is someone would have to step down from that position in order for me to have the opportunity, as it's written right now. Either Margaret Ferguson and or Jim Podol, and of course Betty Evans has the opportunity because it'd be her election, she would do it, but someone would have to step down according to this ordinance. The only way to do it is if someone steps down. But it has to happen because it's part of the ordinance saying I'll be given that opportunity. Not to mention one of the things when no one else is talking. I think I have found personally in watching the way the state of California has gone, that term limits are really probably, in my estimation, not a good thing, because then, as the people up at the state do now, all of our electeds, they really serve at the pleasure of staff. And staff has the upper hand. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Our staff is wonderful. So please don't read anything into it. We get the greatest staff that's ever been in a special district right here at Vallecitos. But it does make that opportunity is that as you keep changing presidents, staff is the only constant, as we see now happening at the state capitol. Staff is the only constant, well, and lobbyists. So I would like to see us do something with B. And yes, I would like the opportunity. That's the spirit that I think it was written in, but I wasn't here at the time. But if we're going by it, then I have to be given that opportunity.
If I could go back in time just a little bit based on the way it was written, it used to be a little more vague than that. Because it has been a historical approach. That was actually written in, I want to say it was 8 years ago, give or take. I wasn't involved in the process because it was not stated that you would have the opportunity. So this language was actually put in by the board several years back to say that a board member who then they wrote, shall have the opportunity. It's not mandatory. To me, it's permissive because it doesn't say shall serve during the period. And I think that's, I think that's the question here is what is the intent? Is the intent exactly that you have to have the opportunity? Because like you said, because of the rotation, you won't have the opportunity. So I think that's the question.
Yes,
And if I may, and I appreciate you stating it that way, but I don't know when was the last attorney you had serving on this board. What is legalese and what was meant by it are two different things. And I wasn't here when it happened, but I can only assume by the means it's meant everybody has an opportunity. We don't care, everybody gets 1 year. And if you do follow this, that's great. And if you want to change it just because you don't particularly care for the person, that's a different story.
Director Evans?
Well, First of all, I guess I'm gonna do it kind of in reverse. I would like to ask the council, is there a difference between the word will and shall in a legal basis?
They both, purely looking at the two words, if you were to pull out Black's Law Dictionary, I don't think you'd find a whole lot of difference between either word. That said, that's a very sterile and detached assessment of that question because of those two words. In the context in which you find that here, I want to be real clear to everybody on the board. What's contained in this board policy and what's being discussed right now by the board at 1.9b is not really a legal issue. It does vary from agency to agency. And while I may not be able to speak to the volume or to the depth or to the breadth of the experiences shared by Directors Podel and Directors Martin in terms of other boards, I have served on other boards and I advise several others as well. And there are a lot of different ways that I have seen and in context in which I have served where this issue was addressed from an organizational standpoint. Some have a rotational process, some have no process at all, and it's just whoever wants to put their name in December can put their name in, and it goes forward. It just really varies based upon the makeup and the pleasure of the board.
Thank you. I was not asking you to solve it as a legal problem. I just wanted to understand, in my understanding, will and shall are similar. Didn't say may, and so just reading it, that's how I interpret it. That's my first, so I feel that the word that's operative also is the word opportunity. If we have, and this is to the board, if we have a situation where we have a historical basis that has not been voted on as a board policy, and just on a historical basis, I don't feel that's a valid reason when we can point that it does not address what our voted policy is. They will have the opportunity. Every one of us has the opportunity to also say, no, I agree with you, Podel. But in order for us to do what this policy says, and I don't care which one of the four of us I'm talking about, it says we will each have an opportunity in our 4-year term, and I go to elected because it's true, over a 6-year time, if you were moving them, after I think it's like 15 years, you run into a year where the way it handles, you have to skip one. I'm sure elected is in there because that's all you can guarantee, and that's why I went for it. I think the people who come on should have the opportunity. After that, you're re-elected, and I think it's how it falls to make the policy happen. As far as voting, I understand not wanting to get into the contention of power of 3 or 4 versus 1 or 2. I understand as a board we need to support each other in that position. But even if that's the case, and we do this rotational thing, we're basically either not expressing support for our president, or we're just assuming we support them. I think we should be adult enough to vote on it. You have this rotation in the board, you said at SMUSD. Is it in writing?
Couldn't tell you.
Well, to me, this is where, and that's part of what I appreciated so much about that leadership thing, is this is exactly how conflicts arise. And obviously, traditionally, you kind of laugh and say, wow, the history 8 years ago, it was even more vague. Well, 8 years ago, for whatever reason, the board that was here discussed it and felt it was important to vote, and I don't know if it was 3-2 or 5-0, to add the policy that there would indeed be an opportunity in your first 4 years in office. So that's what the policy is. It's not the history, it's not the timeline, it's a fact. And the way it is, someone needs to step down in order for us at some point, and unfortunately, it will be those who are re-elected. Because the new ones are guaranteed in our policy as currently voted, regardless of personality conflicts or timeline or history. That's what our policy says. And if we don't follow that, then we need to say, We all disagree with the policy and we need to rewrite it and vote on it.
Everyone's elected.
You are, but I think the second time round, you don't tell people I'm elected, you were re-elected. I was re-elected. And that's the way I'm saying we can solve the issue of arguing about it over after the first 5 years.
So if you're re-elected, you have less opportunity.
If you're re-elected, yes, you would have less opportunity because our policy is set up on the basis we don't know if you'll be re-elected or not. So all we can say as board members, we can't say as board members and every year you're re-elected. We don't know that. All we know is the first 4 years you're elected. So if all of us were to be continually re-elected till the end of time, we would then, yes, have to work out a way in which we selected each other. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone throwing their hat in or someone nominating someone and the others supporting them. I think that if a president, we can select a vice president and then they can or cannot be the next president. I think it's kind of weird that I know that in 4 years I am supposed to decide to be president or not because of the seats, not because, no, I can't be it next year if I wanted to be it, because the seats say I can't, but the policy does not say it. I'm trying to talk about the policy and what the vote has been by this board right now.
Victor Martin, you had a question?
If the United States went by this policy, the next president would be Jeb Bush, because it's his turn. Not because he's best qualified, not because he's doing the best job, not because he's doing what's best in our case at Vallecitos, following the mission statement and trying to make things happen or not make things happen. But just because it's your turn doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's your turn to be the chairman. Why? I'm busy. I have 4 kids. I have 3 jobs. So I have to rescind that responsibility? That doesn't make sense to me. I understand it seemed to work in the past, but we've come across an impasse here that I think there's only 2 directions you can go. Either you change the policy or adhere to it.
Well,
Yes, sir.
that would be your interpretation, but, from my point of view, for bringing it up in the end of November, just when we're about to change our positions, it just kind of gets into what I was talking about before, kind of heading to which way you can come up with a diverse board, and before you know it, control is with the majority, and tradition goes away. So I think that the idea of rotating, first of all, we're all elected officials, and I think that Hal made a point of that early on, saying that elected officials should be representative of the people. I agree with that. So we're all up here on an equal basis. And again, I think the idea of a rotation takes out that the voting, which then may get into differences that you've had throughout the years. That's all.
Let me just ask the question so that we can get this on the table and see if we can move one way or the other. Either Director Ferguson or Director Podel, would you give up the president position in a rotating fashion? Because if that were the case, then at least we could get through this policy as stated, and then we could modify it the way the board wants to modify it, in such a way as we don't have to worry about whether you're elected or not. In my opinion, the rotation works where everybody gets a shot. But with the policy in front of us, that's not the case. So, and the only way to resolve that and keeping the policy and getting it an opportunity to modify it or correct it would be that one of the next or the next members give up their position so that it could, in fact, take place.
Well, I think what you'd be looking at is Director Ferguson.
Or yourself.
This is what you're looking at right now, is what's happening
I'm not
next month.
asking for it right now at all, and that's where you misunderstand me. Mr. Podel.
Thank you.
I have felt this from the beginning, because when I sat down and was told, you're in that seat and you will be president in the rotation of 4, I went, what? Do I not get nominated? Do people not vote for me? I am not looking at the next presidency. Oh, Director Ferguson is welcome to be the next president. You actually are the pivotal person, because the last 2, the last 2 years we're in office would be your year and my year. Now granted, it could be my year and I could say, no, I don't want it, and I would like to have Betty Ferguson step in for me again, and you guys could vote it down or not. But what I'm trying to say is, this is not about this board, and I apologize profusely that this has happened so late. It has really bothered me. I have spoken to Dennis about it a couple of times, him explaining the history of it, explaining that he thought it was, the we'll have the opportunity, but the opportunity is not there in this policy, and I am not asking any change in the next year. I don't know anything about the next year, except right now it is to be Director Ferguson based on historical. And since that doesn't interrupt.
And opportunity. You're taking my opportunity away from me also.
If we were going to say that you are, as a member, and I guess I look at this as fairness. If I had done, and this is just personal, please do not, this is not meant to offend or applaud anybody. But if I had been on the board already for 4 years and had been president, and the new people came on board, I would step aside and give it to them, because I feel the intent of the policy is fairness. I think that's one, why we rotate. I think where you get real difficulties is when someone gets to be the chair over and over and becomes a real power monger. And 2, so rotation is in there. And the only benefit that was changed and added to it 8 years ago, I believe, is because someone came on board and realized as a new member, unless they got reelected, they wouldn't have a chance to be president. And the board evidently brought that together, because that's what this issue is about. It's true. There's 4 years and there's 5 people to fill 1. So all I am asking is that we agree to do what our policy says. We rotate and we allow elected officials 1 term in 4. And if you don't want, if you want to change it, then say newly elected board members. Because I think, in all honesty, to come on as a board member, and since we were saying the president doesn't really have a lot of clout, and you said that earlier in your statement, I don't remember how you worded it, then I think, in all fairness, the new people, whether it's 2 in 1 year or 3, should have that opportunity. How else are they going to develop a relationship with the GM? And how else are they going to understand Robert's Rules or parliamentary procedure? Let's stop saying, oh, you're new, ooh, stay away, because in the end, we all still vote. We will vote. Even if we do this in the rotation, do we not vote and accept the board? So at the meeting when Jim Hernandez came on as the president, and I was new here, I guess 4 of us could have said, no, we don't like you, Jim. We don't want you president. We still could have voted out this historical thing.
Sure.
So the history doesn't give us anything except avoiding a new person and their inexperience. That's where and I apologize if I've offended anyone. I did not do this in any intention whatsoever, Director Ferguson, that you would not be president. I really look to you, Jim Podel, as the pivotal soul.
Well, then, it's not really time sensitive then.
It's not time sensitive in the sense that you have to make a decision, but I think if this is coming up, we should address it for the next meeting. And not be afraid of what our policy says.
Well, I'm not sure that, do we want to address the policy? I mean, do we want to reword the policy?
I think the policy stands just the way it is.
So you're okay with it?
I'm okay, except I understand you're all uncomfortable with the word elected. So I could see putting newly elected, because we all want to claim ourselves elected. That's me. I'm one
Right.
out of 5.
Right, right.
And
Director
me-
Martin?
And me, who was 20% of the vote, I think it should be open elections. So I think that every year, that the chairperson should be elected by his peers, yes.
So then to clarify,
If you're gonna change
Direct-
it, I have no problem with that.
So that I'm understanding what you're saying, Director Martin, and so the record's clear. Your viewpoint would be to dispense with the policy as it exists?
No,
No rotation?
no, if we're gonna dispense with it,
You
then
wanna
I
go by
come up
elections.
with another policy in its place. Not disband, if you're gonna disband it, then there's new policies that I could see going in place. But just by living by the policy, if that's too much of a reach for some of our members, then it is. But it says what it says, and there's no interpretation, we all speak English. It says all new board members will be given the opportunity. And the way it's set right now, I don't do the two-step into that seat for 4 more years from the year after I'm out of my first office, potentially. And that makes the policy bogus. So I'm just trying to live within the policy and say you have 6 years to move 5 people around. And whenever the chairperson is replaced, you're gonna run into this. Apparently you haven't run into it in 35 years, or since this policy went in, but it's gonna happen. And it'll happen again in the future. So stick by the policy, which I kind of agree with, actually.
That's what I was asking.
But if
I
you're
wasn't-
gonna change it-
I wasn't
If you're
I
gonna
wasn't
change
tracking
it-
with your initial comment, that's why I
I
asked. for
appreciate that,
clarification.
you're not trying to be the 6th director, I understand that. But what I'm saying, if you're gonna change it, then I have great things we can change it for and go to open elections, which I think is a very positive step. If you're gonna keep it the same, then we need to make that decision. It's on the agenda tonight. Let's act on it tonight. Let's get it done. That's something we need to put off. There are a lot of things that show up on agendas occasionally. I'm kind of didn't realize that's what it meant when I read the minutes. But I think everyone realized what was coming up here. This is not new to anybody up here. You know, so let's make something happen.
Yes, Director Evans?
If I may, I would like to make a motion, or is it move? I would move that this board vote to confirm the policy as written, specifically word for word, and that the issue of who is to become, and I don't know if this is part of it, I guess it would be, and that the responsibility of the outgoing chair is to select his or her replacement, knowing full well the responsibilities given by the directions of the policy. That's a long one.
Yeah, and
I apologize.
And before we hear a second, I would not want that, personally, as being the president this year, I would not want the responsibility to elect the next president. I mean, this is a board action that we've all taken,
Cool.
and if you modify your motion, I might be able to support it. But yes, Director Podel?
Well, you'd have to modify the policy, so you're essentially saying you would like to develop a new policy.
No, I don't really think I am. I'm trying to appease everyone. What I'm really saying is, when I have read this repeatedly, I feel that the policy as stated is clear, but the procedures have not and have hindered the policy from happening. And unfortunately, this year, my bringing up happens to include me on the end of one of the elected people. But I would feel this way if I was not a newly elected member, especially after going to the leadership thing and seeing how easily this happens, and the contention is here now. It won't really matter. But this is what our board voted on.
I don't think that the policy is clear.
So I move we accept the policy as it is, and I guess you guys can vote that out, and we'll go for a change.
Well, the policy is already there. So I think what we're talking about.
I'm sorry, the policies aren't there?
The policy is already there.
Point of order on the board.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor. In order to discuss it, we need, if I'm
A second.
correct, we need a second, and then we can discuss it.
Second.
Okay, now, Director Paul, go ahead.
Well, it seems you're making a motion to accept the policy.
That's what I heard.
And
Oh,
it's already there. So I don't quite understand it. Maybe you're trying to say that you want us to accept your interpretation of the policy.
if I may, I am asking, maybe my motion is to say, I move this board follow the policy as written. Follow the policy as written.
We have a motion on the
That's an
floor.
adjourn-
That's a different motion, I think.
That's an amendment by her, and I will amend my second.
Okay, now we have that. All right. Now, so would you repeat your motion, please?
I move that this board follow the policy of section 1B under ordinance number 189, part 19, part B,
Very good.
as written.
All right, is there any further discussion on this portion?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
There seems to be a discrepancy as to interpretation of the English language. So perhaps we could have our scholarly attorney explain what this Part B means and what it doesn't mean. Because that seems to be the problem, is the interpretation of B, what the word opportunity means. You have the opportunity if you get rid of one of the other people. You have the opportunity if, is that what, I guess that's what they're trying to say, I don't get it.
If I could,
General Manager
if I
first.
could, before we get down that path, Director Martin, because I think it is going to be interpretation. If what I hear Director Evans stating, to clarify, so that there is no confusion, because again, elected, to me, doesn't make a distinction if you're elected or re-elected. But I think your intent is that when you and I have talked about this, is within their first four-year term, right? So if that's a clarification you're looking for, I think the whole statement could be clarified very easily. When you go to the third sentence, where it goes during their four-year term, it just says their four-year term. If your intent and what you're reading is their first four-year term, that would be a simple clarification, just to add the word first in there.
That is what I was.
That would be the simplest way to clarify what the intent of the policy. Then we're not worrying about opportunity. Because I will tell you, statistically and mathematically, there will be bizarre things that happen. Because if you go through a turnover of the board, I've gone through several scenarios. One occurs in 3 years, one occurs in the fifth year, where things rotate and you just can't physically do it. It's mathematically, it's not possible.
Can I throw a monkey wrench into that, which is what we lawyers want to do at times? If you make the change that the general manager has proposed, the elected word poses a problem, and I'll tell you how it arises, because it has arisen in the time that I've been part of the firm that advises this board. You can draw a distinction between an elected board member and an appointed board member.
Right.
And just in the time that I've had the pleasure of addressing this board, there have been individuals who have resigned. There have been individuals who have passed away in office. There have been individuals who have retired. Someone, by following the process, gets appointed to fill out either the balance of the term, or they are appointed to fill the vacancy until the next election cycle rolls around. But based on the proposal that I think the GM is suggesting, you could create this anomaly of a director who's appointed who may be deprived of that opportunity as well, because that person, he or she, gets to an election cycle, doesn't get elected, never got the opportunity to be president, or it does get elected, but then is that still that person's first term?
If I may.
It creates some issues, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, right. Director Martin?
I think there's a huge distinction between elected and appointed. You're elected by the ratepayers. You're appointed by
usually by the board, by the rest of you guys.
There's a huge difference. So I think when it says elected, I think that's a term that belongs in there.
Okay.
Because I do think that makes a difference, that you are elected to this position by the ratepayers and not by, we don't have it in this city, but in other cities, they might have, or other districts, funeral districts, cemetery districts, might have a good old boy network where they just put in their choice anyhow. And we don't have that. So the ratepayer, and by leaving elected in there, whoever was on the board at the time thought about this and put elected in there for a good and substantial reason. So I don't see a second way of reading this. Do you see a conflict, Mr. Attorney, as how you would read this any different than what it states?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
Part B, section 19, part B.
Yes.
Do you see interpretations there, more than one, of what it says in the English language?
So you're asking me, are there different ways to interpret the language that's present in 1.9B?
In order to, and yes, in order to cover what specifically we're speaking about tonight.
Right.
We don't need to go off on tangents.
Right.
What we're speaking about tonight. Is there two ways to interpret that?
Well, I think that one of the problems that you have with the way this is worded is that this may be the reason I went to law school and not to engineering school, because I look at this as a math conundrum, and the math conundrum that leaps off the page to me is, how do you fit 5 board members into a 4-year term?
You don't. You fit 5 into 6. That's easier than that.
But it still creates anomalies like the one that I think this board's very seriously deliberating over tonight.
Yeah, I think, Director Martin, again, I would agree, elected is elected. And again, if the intent of what Director Evans is, and possibly yours as well, is what you're saying is during the first term, you shall be allowed to serve. I think that's what I'm hearing.
That's for your turn? Yes, Director Pohl had a question first.
So, obviously, we're, no matter what Director Martin is saying, there's only one way to read this. We're arguing about it, so. So, maybe a way out of this would say that we address this in the next few months, or if you want to address it tonight, I don't care. And you go with what you had suggested earlier, which is to elect. Now, if you do that, you avoid all of the wording that's there.
And then that goes to the last sentence, which is, the president serves at the pleasure of the board, which is.
Of course, because he has to be elected.
Right.
So it gets rid of all of those other little things about elected and opportunity and stuff like that.
Well, and the last sentence also provides a governor for the rest of the board members in the event that a president takes office and that person decides to sort of ride
It's a
herd
check and balance as well.
off the ranch.
Mhm.
The other 4 has the ability to, okay, we want to change. And you can do that in the middle of the term if the circumstances warranted it.
Yes, Director Evans?
Okay, I believe that the policy of rotating is important. And I feel that the intent, if this says the president serves at the pleasure of the board, does that not imply we vote for the president, and then if the president happens to go off in a direction, we can vote to remove them?
Yes.
We do vote for the president, we accept the president.
The first action the board takes when the new president comes
So
in
the
is
first
to
action is
accept.
we elect
Yes.
our president.
Yep.
So I think the issue of election or voting for someone is in this ordinance. My second question is in regards to the word appointed. In regards to that, this ordinance and this policy does not direct any information or attention to an appointed person, and I tend to feel that the elected person is elected by the ratepayers, and they're of more significance than an appointed person. And it was already removed, it wasn't in this, so adding it. But I do feel I would like to amend or make a motion.
Well, we have to act on the motion that's on the
Oh,
floor
we
or
do.
amend it.
Amend it.
All right. You're going to amend the motion, which was to follow the procedure.
Yes, I would like to amend my motion that we follow the policy as written with the addition of the word first between their and 4-year term. So it would read, hold the office of president once during their first 4-year term.
That's the motion?
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I will amend my second.
To be the second, all right? Is there any discussion on that?
I think I've said everything.
I don't see any. All in favor of the motion?
I do have discussion though.
Oh, okay, that's what I asked. I didn't see your hand.
By taking this vote, if the legalese tell me, by taking this vote, then will that mandate that someone's vision is going to change? I don't know how you do that.
What it comes down to, Director Martin, is what I hear, everybody likes the rotation component, and to be sitting over here in my seat, let's say the 3 of you are elected. Okay, so we go however the rotation is you replace. So I assume if you 3 are elected, the rotation would be you 3 in the first 4 years. And it just moves past, whether you sit, I think the rotation keeps it simple for me. So that rotation would have to be followed in those first 4 years. There will be the process because of the rotation factor, and you will be addressing this in the very near future, is that because of the way the current rotation is, the board has to vote on who the chair is. So if it was coming before you right now, sometime in the next 2 years, someone's either going to step down voluntarily, or the board is going to take a vote against the incoming chair through the normal rotation process. That's really what happens. There's no way around that.
But they're not taking it against the person, they take it to comply with the ordinance.
Yeah, oh, sure.
It's not
a personal issue. I agree.
It's not a personal
Yeah, it's not a personal issue, but that is going to
Comply
be,
with an ordinance.
it's going to be something that's going to happen, and will probably happen repeatedly.
It will have to happen.
Yeah, I'm just
This
telling
board
you,
will
this
have
is just
to.
the way the rotation, so the alternatives are, I think that clarification, Director Evans, will make it much more functional, I believe. The other alternative, as Director Martin said, is every year the board votes who the chair, the vice chair, and the committees are, and you vote as a whole. You do vote on that already, I agree.
That's the easiest.
But that is, the motion that you did make to add first in there, to me, makes it a much more clear policy of what the intent is.
Director Evans?
Not to belabor the point, but I thought the word rotate simply meant it moved amongst the directors, did not specify in what direction. It simply meant, it just says they will, where's the word?
Reorganize, doesn't even say rotate.
Oh, reorganize, provide.
It doesn't say, it just says
So,
reorganize.
I guess what I'm trying to say by rotate, it's not even in there. It just changes. I feel there's no reason for us to all move seats if Betty Ferguson becomes,
You don't want to sit by me?
well, that's not, I'm not gonna get into that right now. But if she becomes the president, it seems to me the person who's outgoing would step into her seat, or if it was Jim Podol, or if it was Hal, there's no reason for us to all be moving. And we don't even address the vice president in here. Maybe we need to talk about that at some other meeting. Does the vice president, I feel like the vice president is there in case the president isn't, but it doesn't say anywhere in here that automatically already pre-elects you to the position. So I feel like if we're going to, we are going to be electing each other. And if we follow the policy and we understand what we're to do with it, it really isn't about for or against following the policy.
Any further questions? Yes, Director Poodle?
So what if we vote, we take a vote, and it's that person's fourth year and they haven't been chairperson yet, and that person gets denied?
If that person has not been chair in their first 4 years, they wouldn't be, they need to let people know that. I do not know the history of this board. I know it was Daryl Gentry last.
Well,
And I saw Betty Ferguson signed on one policy for 2010, I believe. So Jim, if you haven't been president, and I assume that may be what you're hinting at,
no.
then obviously the next 3 presidents need to be you.
No, it's not what I'm
Wanna
hinting
deal with
at.
it
I'm just,
first.
what I'm hinting at is we're kind of being a little contradictory here, I think, in the point of saying, well, we vote for him anyway. We vote for that position. So if we're voting, there's a possibility that that person will not be elected president or
Not if you
chairperson.
follow the policy. The policy states very clearly that if there is one board member up here.
So there's no
who is in the-
vote.
There's what?
It wouldn't be a vote.
What do you mean there wouldn't be a vote? We're voting. We're voting to follow the policy, and we vote at the meeting each time, don't we?
So at the meeting, that we would be voting for a chairperson, okay? So let's just say there's an elected official who's in his 4th year, and he's not voted as chairperson.
Well, then the board would be negating their board policy, because the board policy tells us that we will vote.
So that you don't vote.
Well, I'm not getting to vote in the rotational one either, am I?
Well,
I'm being told
all
what to do.
I'm saying, Betty, is that it's not real clear. That's
It's
all.
clear to me, the policy says I will vote for that person if it's their 4th year and they haven't been it in their first 4 years of office. It's my responsibility. And knowing that I voted for this policy, I'm voting now. And so if I'm up here 12 years and that 1 year there's 3 people, the 4th year, I've already pre-agreed that the precedent or the privilege of those new members in their first 4 year to be president, I've given that to them. It's a given. If it's their last year and it's their turn. But I voted to give them that turn right here and put it in my policy. Whether I adore the person or I don't adore the person, or they've done it before or they've never done it before.
Jim?
I have questions to that. To your memory, and I say this because my first board meeting, Jim was elected. And I saw in my minutes that Jim would be elected, and
I can't hear you, I'm so sorry.
Director Ferguson would be the second, be the vice. I understood that, but I didn't know that meant that she was gonna be the chairman next time. I didn't know at that time. I have since come up with that. And after reading this in depth, which was a little while after, I'm like, well, that's pretty simple. But now apparently it's not simple because of the personality involved. And I'm sorry to hear that, but that's fine.
I don't understand what you mean by that.
My personality in particular.
Okay.
And that's okay, that's fine by me. And I think that Director Evans has been trying to stay clear of that, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate her effort. But it seems to me to read the way it reads, I don't see, even for an attorney, how you can read it 2 separate ways. They're all given the opportunity. So I would not be given that opportunity as it stands now, unless I win a second election. That's exactly what we're set, that's exactly what this rotational, we've done it always this way, idea is. And am I correct in assuming that no one has ever been voted down to be the president, in your knowledge, Dennis?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's always worked that way. They've always done the hokey pokey and moved chairs. So
Many years
just-
ago, I can't remember what time it was actually where this situation did come up. And I don't remember which board member it was because I wasn't dealing at this level, but there was a board member who stepped down to allow that opportunity. So it has always worked from a, and Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to dismiss staff.
Oh,
We're just sitting
absolutely,
here.
sorry.
If you guys could take off, I'm sorry. I should have let you go earlier.
We should run that hour, half hour.
Is it exciting or thrilling? You've seen it before.
You can see it on TV.
I know it's been long when Ronnie's standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down.
Sorry, Randy.
Her sciatic, is that bothering her? It has happened in the past, Director Martin, where a person did step down. Other than that, I think because of the longevity of our board, it's never been an issue. It's always just rotated through. We have had deaths, we have had people step down, we've had a variety of things happen. Appointees have come in and they've just continued to rotate through. So we just could be in a new era. We could go to the elections in 14?
Yeah,
14?
next year.
And have 2 new board members. So again, we're gonna be going through this. Maybe it's just time to clarify the policy. I don't think following it has been an issue because it's always worked. But it just appears at this point, we need to clarify. I think the motion that Director Evans made, I think, to me, clarifies it. Will there be a situation where this does roll around and is gonna have to be a decision by the board? Yes. I think that's a given. But I think if the board moves forward and works together as the board has done, it's not going to be a critical decision, nor is it going to be a divisive one. I think it'll be something that will work out by the board for the best interest of the board. No matter how you do this, there's going to be an opportunity that it could be divisive if the board chooses to be a divisive board. If the board works together as a whole, I don't see this happening as an issue.
Yes.
And as I may, and I'll ask for a legal opinion again, if it's put the one word that Director Evans has put in there, which I really like, once during their first 4-year term, the the last sentence is never negated.
No.
The last sentence is, the president serves at the pleasure of the board.
Right.
So
That's a
that
given.
person has had the opportunity to put their name in the hat to become president, but if he doesn't get voted, or he or she doesn't get voted in, they had the opportunity.
Yes.
The board just didn't vote for it.
But they can't.
No, they had the opportunity.
No, but what we just said was if that's his 4th term and we decide, we don't have a vote.
You've broadened the definition, Director Martin, of opportunity larger than I was giving it, agreed.
Apparently that's been changed by other people before me.
I was, because I was thinking of the term opportunity and reading it in the context of the last sentence, which is the pleasure of the board. The pleasure of the board speaks more to the issue of the person who's up in the rotation, who wants the opportunity, who accepts the opportunity, takes the spot, gets 3, 4, 5 months into the term, and the remaining board members say, "What? You're doing what? You're going out and representing yourself as the district, and in reality, you're just one of 5 voices? No. We as a group, our consensus is you're not representing properly in that position. We're going to pull you back." That's not the same thing. In the scenario that you're talking about, though, at least as I've understood the dialogue up to this point, I think the opportunity, or the term opportunity, speaks more to the issue of actually getting to sit in the chair, not just the act of putting your marble with your name on it in the hat and letting everybody else pick it out, or decide not to pick it out. That doesn't seem, that definition, that's my definition of opportunity. It's the right to get to sit in the chair.
Thank you, and I agree with you 100%.
We have a board member who is out of the room, so if we have any further questions, let's hold, please.
Since you have one out of the room, may I?
You want to just take a 5-minute break?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Give
I think we
everybody
can
a
do
chance.
that. Yeah, we can take a 5-minute break.
Give everybody a chance to clear their head.
Yeah, that's right. I think the motion
And
can
just a
stay
reminder
based on where we're at.
The camera's still on. Well, seems how everybody else is gonna go.
I'm gonna rough it.
Maybe my attitude will be better now.
Camera's still rolling.
Had my legs crossed. Oh, sorry.
Just in case.
Yeah, we're still on film.
Oh, that's good. That's great. I always drink a cup of coffee and a glass of water before I sit down. Where did we leave this? I was hoping it'd all be settled by the time I came back.
Send out a text. There we go. Yeah, that's what it does. It fixes it.
You want to go, yeah, right there between the,
Thank you, staff.
Yeah. John didn't have his phone. Forgot to tell him to go ahead and take that out.
How much more business we got? Oh, there it is. I think I got it here. Oh, I have the second part of this.
That
I'll
was
go
it.
back.
Actually, it was pretty fresh, but
Thanks to,
what's that?
thanks to somebody else.
Yes,
mentioned
yes.
that. So it's only outgoing ones that make that. Yeah, it's funny.
okay. Add some more water.
I used to be able to tell them when my cell phone was going to ring it.
Alrighty.
My old computer just would start to do that.
My subwoofer at home does it.
Yeah.
So I turn the volume on, take the phone.
Very good. Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor?
Well,
Yes, sir?
is there a chance we could ask for a continuance and maybe have the attorney or the general manager work with the attorney, come up with better language?
Unless the motion maker and the second rescind their motion, I don't believe that's an opportunity. And,
Call for, if you want to, what you do is call for the vote. If
Right.
the
Call
vote
for the question.
passes, then the decision has been made. If it doesn't pass, then it'll be an opportunity for more discussion.
that's right. So we have a motion to add the term first, so their first four-year term, and to follow the policy as written with the modification. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstain.
And abstain. The motion carries. Now then, what is the pleasure of the board relative to moving forward on this?
If I could, what I would do is take that motion, I'd bring a revised ordinance back to the board on December 12th for consideration.
Very good.
It'll be, you'll be agendizing or the first thing on the agenda?
We'll put it
It'll be the
together
first thing
and
on
then
the
we'll
agenda.
meet and we'll bring it forward and
Yeah.
then we'll put that first on the list, because I guess that will be the first thing that we're going to do.
Okay.
And we'll move on that activity.
Okay.
All right. That's number 2.9. And now we go to reports. General manager.
I've got about 10 items.
Good. Save them.
Actually, just two very quickly. The new webpage is supposed to go live hopefully next Wednesday,
Huh?
give or take. It is about as complete and set up as we can make it, but you can't make anything perfect, so I said, put it out there and get it going. So that we'll move forward. Once we do go live with the webpage, we'll, at the next, maybe the next board meeting, probably in January, because it'll just be too much. December 12th's got quite an agenda already. We'll walk the board through it, do a presentation on it. That also allows us then to go through that transparency certification through the San Diego Leadership Council, because we then have the website. Some good news, I probably haven't briefed you on it in a long time because nothing has happened, but you may recall that the CPUC, SDG&E, had two issues that they tried to revise as they move forward. One was the solar power, to where there was a percentage of solar power that they had to have in their portfolio.
Yes.
The way SDG&E interpreted it was within their region. A bunch of us got together, ourselves, Valley Center, several school districts, and everything else. We pursued that one. The CPUC said, no, it's statewide, so that SDG&E couldn't do it. The response to that was SDG&E tried to change the rates to where it would no longer be a tariff-based rate, in other words, how much you use. The fixed charge would now recover all costs. So it basically took away any incentive we had as a public agency to design pump stations to pump at night, to build storage tanks, to the same thing schools do. You do your chillers, you turn them off and on at night, all that stuff that we do. That is hundreds of millions of dollars to save SDG&E from having to make power at night.
Right.
They wanted to change that. I got the word today that the preliminary decision that finally came down after the appeal was they're going to deny SDG&E's change to both the PAT rate, which is time of use, and their commodity rate. So that did get defeated, we believe. We're hoping the final decision will come out from the PUC next week, but that's the preliminary decision. It's a very favorable decision for all the utilities.
Very good.
That's all I have.
San Diego County Water Authority.
Oh, I skipped legal. Well, one, I have a book that was produced by San Diego Water Authority called To Quench a Thirst. It's a very interesting and brief history of water in the San Diego region. I brought one I could put in the library, but there are extras if any of you would like your own copy. I believe I can get them for you. And this is an update. I believe they did one quite a while back. Very easy to read and informative. Secondly, then, I just wanted to say I was really excited about the legislative policy because we will have things coming up in the new year that I think they would like our board to agree to, offer support to. And the trial at this time is set for MWD on December 13th, I believe. It seems fairly positive, but we'll see how it goes. And otherwise, the information was sent out in the electronic form.
Very good. Encino Wastewater Authority. Yes.
So, at our last board meeting, I have a meeting tomorrow, which is part of the PFC meeting. Last board meeting, they were talking about a couple of things that both of our committees had talked about previously. They call pyrolysis demonstration. I think I got that right.
I think you did too.
And so what that's about is the next generation of, I guess you might call it condensing the fertilizing pellets. So by this extra process, which has been suggested or perfected by this company called Anagasia, something of that nature, they're putting out like $2.6 million to bring in, part of it's a grant, part of it's their money, and they're bringing on their equipment onto the EWA property, and they're going to take about 10 months or a year, and they're going to show by this extra heating process that we'll come up with a better pellet. So supposedly, if I have it right, it reduces carbon, it increases the off-gassing so they can use that for the biofuel for digestion, eliminates odors, and gives you a more concentrated pellet. And so they're partnering with us for 10 months to a year, and then after that time, when they decide it works, that it's beneficial, whatever, then they'll come up with a contract on how they want to proceed from there. So it's a pretty big deal in that the Encino Wastewater Authority has been a front runner nationwide, and it's just a phenomenal organization. It keeps coming up with better and better ideas, and we're just
fortunate to be a partner in that because of their ingenuity and how far in advance and forward-thinking that they are. The second thing we talked about was the south parcel, and basically, since that's been talked about for quite a while, basically what we were talking about was to just approve a conceptual idea of a plan that would be submitted to the city of Carlsbad, so that when they're doing their general plan update, that it's incorporated in their general plan. So we were not approving the conceptual, let's just say the development concept that's been put out there, because that's up to a lot of discussion, controversy, and whatever else all the different agencies want to bring into that. But we did approve it, so it would be at least presented to the city of Carlsbad, so they would include it in their general plan update. And the thought is, in the long run, that it saves us the money of having to get those permits ourselves, our clearances.
And I would add just a couple of items. That paralysis, that 2.4 million, the grant from the state is 300,000. So this company is putting up 95% of the proceeds. We're putting in 68,000, if I remember the number correctly. And if it does what the gentleman who has invented this says, we will be his partner, they will be our partner going forward to do this with other wastewater facilities, God knows where, maybe around the world. And the south parcel, which when I heard about this was a little skeptical because the engineers were driving this, sorry Dennis, the engineers were driving this, they showed us some boxes and I went, oh Lord have mercy, let's put this out to an RFQ, get something. Well, the time frame was very short, so the engineers actually did that, and Rob Quigley was the architect that they selected. And with the conceptual plan, I had him put in the minutes that both of these projects, the south parcel and this pyrolysis, in the future will receive national awards because it is such an exceptional plan that is being put forward, and this process is just over the top. Yes, sir.
And how much does the conceptual plan cost?
Por nada. This is,
Somebody's paying for it, who?
right now, I believe.
Which part, the pyrolysis?
No, the
other one?
conceptual plan from.
No, all the conceptual plan is, I think it's a $23,000 expense, but that's just the extra work that Carlsbad has to do to modify their general plan process. And so the difference is, correct Martin, part of it is like the Meadowlark and some others, because they're public utility, what they're doing is going to include the general plan as public utility property, so that we avoid some costs down the road.
I think what Director Markham may be asking is how much did we pay for that conceptual plan?
Yeah, it's like 23.
And so,
23,000.
no, I think it was before that we had hired this company to come in. So
Yeah,
what-
that was like 2 years ago, the best use, whoever did that. so.
Right, that's what.
Capstone? Is that?
Capstone?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Capstone.
I'm not sure what the
Yeah, I
expense
don't
was.
know.
This current one is 21 grand.
I'm just saying, I'm sure over the years it's had its proponents and its detractors.
Oh,
And both for good reason, but once you put together a plan, in my experience, once you put together a plan and it gets all these awards, well then, gosh darn it, you gotta build it, don't you?
well, the good news, at least that portion, this is as felt pen with some color as you've ever seen. And it is primarily to ensure that we can have it brought to the city of Carlsbad to include in their general plan so that they can discuss it and look at it and point to it, because there's a component within there, about 4.5 acres, that personally I think should be part of the plan. They don't want it in there, and so there's a discussion period. But what we have seen, or what I saw, was very creative and beneficial to Encina and therefore us. So,
Another question.
Yes.
I think this is for Director Podel. I think when Kevin was here and he was talking about the reclamation and the fertilizer, I think he used 22% is what's actually being done there out of the 100%, and we still have 78% going into the ocean. What percent, how much is that gonna change with this new development?
No, what you're talking about, what Kevin was talking about there is the percentage of solids that comes out of the stream that comes into the plant. So all the water liquid that continues out into the ocean. That's where the North County Coalition has gotten together saying, what do we do with that at some point in the future, so we quit dumping it in the ocean. The solids component is this pyrolysis thing. To give you an analogy, the best way to do it, imagine taking a piece of charcoal, making it half the size of what it is, and you're squeezing out the black carbon, so the fertilizer still has the same nutrient, but this goop that they squeeze out of it,
Double the concentration of it.
the concentration is so great, we put it back into the treatment process, and it's such a strong food, it generates a tremendous amount of extra gas that we then use for power.
And I'm sorry, and speaking to explain it, refresh my memory, the 22% was doing fertilizer, 78% was still being sold as fuel
Yeah.
to a cement company.
And that is slowly evolving over the, I think it's a 3 to 5 year period where they want it to be the opposite. They want to be the majority of it being sold locally for fertilizer and the minor amount being sold. But the deal is right now, we don't have the fertilizer markets. We might as well sell it to who we can and get 10 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the evolution, is to switch it the other way.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Director's report and travel conferences, seminars. Ton of them. Yes, sir.
I spent a better part of last week at the Special District Leadership Academy Conference. And some of you, my understanding is the history is that this used to be done in 2 or 3 different segments.
3 of them.
3 different segments, and they've now narrowed it down to having it all in one segment, which I have to thank the board, thank the ratepayers. One, education, so much information that I was able to use today, not to its fullest because I didn't want the board to be here till midnight, but when it came going over the finances and understanding special district financing, which is different than other places I've been. So it's brought a lot more questions up, which I'm sure I'm gonna have for somebody. And Tom, I'm not sure what's your role anymore. I know that we've hired 2 people. We have the gentleman, and then we have another guy tonight. What are you doing these days?
Like we say in the sewer business, I'm number 2.
You're number 2, yeah, I know.
I'm doing more policy level stuff. Still a CFO, so I'm still have my pulse
Okay.
on what's happening with the finances and things like that. But John is the finance manager, so he's managing the day-to-day stuff. He's got his supervisors reporting to him, accounting, purchasing, customer service, and meters.
So as a board member, though, for me, I know it's the same chain of command.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, part of it has been when we did the reorganization, I think it was the year before last, when we brought Tom up, second floor as the AGM. It was to handle more policy issues, do the research, help develop policies, yet keep the high-level finance issues under his jurisdiction.
I still do debt. I'm
He
managing
still does the debt
issuance and stuff
management,
like
debt
that.
issues, bond, things like that. And then you'll notice John's been speaking more now instead of Tom.
I know that.
Because that's the evolution that we've gone through on the succession plan, was to bring those people through.
You should give John a couple of jokes.
Yeah.
But anyhow, at this Special District Leadership Academy Conference, which I would also say, I'm sure you should give our own report that Director Evans was at, I'm going to go over some of the things we went through. Very intensive, very educational. Building a foundation for good governance, and that was by David Aranda, who's known very well. The next gentleman we know from here, because our staff has had him here, Brent Ives. He gave a couple of foundation for good governance, fulfilling your district mission. Very educational, and I think especially for me in many ways, because it really made me understand the mission and the mission statement and what we're here for, what we're here about, the personalities out of it, or try to. And then Brent Ives, get the word out, best practices for communication and outreach. And he was really, which I thought was exciting, because I think that's exciting future for the board here. It's how the board is an integral part of getting the word out and being part of the community, which I think our chairperson brought up. Just reaffirmed it on a level that, when you have something to say good or bad, people elected you. They didn't elect John. They don't know John. They have a trust in you. So getting more involved out there, I think, is a great thing. And defining board and staff roles and relationships. And I have had absolutely no problem understanding my role versus your role as general manager. But I think it was very, very, very intensive, very good, brought up a lot of points. There, I'd say about 200 people that attended the conference. And you just did something all the time, so it's very good. So thank you very much.
It's a very good process, and I like that they did it in one meeting now instead of three.
And I have my certificate
Yeah.
as well as completion. and
See, I don't have mine yet.
Also, okay, you didn't complete it.
I know, that's the problem. I was the old school guy, one at a time.
2 years, you're not bad.
I know.
I also got with me the special district leadership, not the foundation, got one of those too. Transparency, and we don't have that yet. I thought that was
That's
something.
what we
you
had
told
just
us.
talked about doing through
I
this
saw you
whole
bring
thing.
that up.
But
Okay.
we can't continue that until the website's up, because the website is where all of these documents reside for the public.
And
So-
I noticed that.
Yes, the
yeah.
board's taken the action. I've sent the letter. We asked Mr. Mike Ock, he's the executive, I think he's the XO of LAFCO. He's already consented to come in and be independent peer review. And then Ms. Thorne is the GM of Leavenhagen, she's consented to come and do it. So what you do is, once everything's posted, we bring them in, they sit down as an independent peer review, they say yes. If they say yes, they then write a letter to us, and then we turn the whole package over to the Leadership Foundation, and then
And there's only
they
about
certify.
40 districts in the entire state of California that have this.
Yeah.
So it'd be very high honor for us to.
I think right now down here, it's Dist Irrigation District of Leavenhagen, and the rumor is Rincon has just submitted their data too.
So then we're better than most areas.
We'll be ahead of
There's only
most of them.
40 across the state.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
It's a lot of documents that you have to
I
put
was
together.
reading the requirements, I'm going, yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
a
lot
lot.
of time.
So I'm hoping by February, the district will receive certification.
Thank you.
Very good.
That's the only one that you give today?
This was a busy month. The Water Reuse Conference, indirect and direct potable, they are here now. And, you know, when first conference I went to, that conversation was like one session, yeah, it's coming 10, 20 years. This conference, well, and I just read it in the Union, that San Diego's approved that facility to go online. Is that what I read correctly?
They are getting authority to move forward and continue some of the additional stuff. Because keep in mind, the difference between direct and indirect potable reuse is nothing more than the environmental piece in between.
Right, right.
So if City of San Diego doesn't have to build that environmental piece in between,
Yeah,
which includes a 20-mile pipe all the way out to San Vicente,
Yep.
leave the water in there, you still have to build a treatment plant.
oh, yes.
There still has to be a treatment plant built. So the whole goal is to skip that middle piece,
Mhm.
save that pipe,
Yeah,
build the treatment plant, and put it in the aqueduct. Similar to what we want to do in Encina, take it from Encina down to the desal
Yeah.
and ship it right back.
And I think I just heard when we're up there, they call that Mother Nature's kiss.
Pretty much.
That's the third part.
Yeah.
You have to do something,
That's,
put it somewhere.
don't make Mother Nature mad.
yeah. And then we had the Casa dinner where we had the tax collector.
Yeah.
That was informative. And there still is a category for redevelopment. And I guess they're developing those monies coming in and sending them out correctly. We were all pretty surprised with that.
They're looking at it because it is allowed already still by law. The
Mhm.
trick that came down to is over 12% of the property tax revenue in the state have been tied up by redevelopment agencies. That's what the governor did. He said no
Mhm.
more.
And then San Diego, North County EDC, they had a meeting with the Maritime Alliance, which is the only organization looking at anything connected with water, whether it's seawater, salt, freshwater, seawater, both on land and off, of course, and 47,000 jobs, $14 billion industry, and nobody has a clue. So they're putting this alliance together to do studies and figure out a better way, and quite frankly, San Diego's leading the charge. So that's kind of interesting. Yes, sir?
As an adjunct to that, only because in another life I was involved with the North County Economic Development Commission. All the cities, 7 cities, actually it was Bill Hoyt's baby.
Mhm.
He's the one that started. The 7 cities were going to put in a nest egg. To date, only 2 cities have. And the SEDS money that's supposed to be coming through for grants, they haven't done anything with it. So I'd ask you as a member to ask Carl and those appropriate, what's going on with the money the 2 cities have put in. It was $20,000 each city, and only 2 actually put the money in. And the SEDS money that was supposed to be coming out of this, they haven't even written a grant yet. So this big picture is like, okay, get down to the small picture, you have people that are unhappy.
Okay.
But just to let them know.
Our general manager, Kim, from Olivenheim, is the chair of this year, so
There you go.
I will definitely,
Ask her.
I will definitely put it to her. All right, yes, my dear.
I will put the details in writing, but I did want to say on the water reuse conference, I was excited not only that it's actually becoming an issue that the potable water is here, but I like the fact they're working really hard to come up with a term that we can all use the same term and get away from indirect and direct and recycled. And one of my favorite things they did is they talked about how we call it recycled or reclaimed water. And then they had a picture of a sign above, now why it was there, I don't know, but they had a picture of the men's urinal. And above the urinal it says, "This toilet is flushed with recycled water, do not drink." And I says, how would you feel if you're standing there and you do that and then you go outside and they're handing you a bottle of potable water that's gone through the process and they're calling it recycled water. So it's a really cute way of showing how we use these terms, and they're really working on coming up with something that rings true for everyone. But I thought that was amazing.
Swim in your toilet, don't do it like
Yes, Director Podel.
Jim, you and I were over at the Council of Water Utilities, and real quickly, they had a speaker that was Mary Ann Dickerson, and she was from the Alliance of Water Efficiency.
Yes.
And so her whole discussion was the nexus between water and energy, and if I got it right, what she was saying is her direction, what she's trying to do is get agencies to think about water as being the way that you save energy, not by putting money into saving energy by solar or anything else, but talking about water is what drives all the electrical rates.
And a question I didn't ask her till I didn't think about it, because she was saying that, was it 30% of the power used is directed to water?
Yeah.
And I didn't think about it till later, but we create a bunch of power on the total.
Yeah, it's the amount of power that's created by solar compared to the water.
No, not solar, but hydroelectric.
Oh, hydro? Yeah, it is. It's a fair amount, but that's still a net use of what we do use in the state of California is 30%.
Oh, okay.
Tremendous
No,
amount. Well, you've seen the bumps.
Oh, absolutely.
There's not much hydropower in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it used to be 20%, they just moved up to 30, for some reason,
I don't think it's ever been as low as 20. I'd say I've always heard in 27 plus
Oh, okay.
percentile. But it's a chunk of power.
Good to know.
Yeah.
We're almost there, folks. 4.1, the quarterly board expense. I think everybody's received it. It's in the package. Any questions on that? Very good. Then 5.1, director's comment, future agenda items.
I would just like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for the discussion of today's meeting.
Very good. And don't go away, because although we're going to adjourn this meeting, now is the time and the place to call to order the agenda for the regular meeting of the Financial Corporation of Vallecitos Water District. And with that, Diane, would you mind calling the roll?
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Ferguson?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Here.
Director Porter?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here. And entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Consent calendar. Move to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Oh.
How about a motion? Is there a motion?
You said move.
Did I say not
Then you're making a
entertain?
motion.
You can make a motion if you want.
I made the motion, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Very good. Item 1.1.
2.1.
Oh, excuse me, 2.1. Financial year 12-13, annual audit report.
And note and file.
Note and file, done.
Did staff have any report at all?
I say just for your understanding what it is.
Same report as before.
When we formed when we sold the certificate of participations, the bond several years back, we had to form a financial corporation, which is the umbrella group that receives the money. So what we have to do is have an annual report, because they go through the audit, and you're the same board members that are both boards. There's no difference. This is not an elected, this is a subsidiary of the district. So what you have is you are presented You just heard the talk on the annual audit, and as the financing corporation, you take the same action, which is another file.
Same thing will happen with the budget as well.
The budget will come
Two
forward.
meetings.
Yeah, same thing.
Very good, and that's the end of the finance corporate, oh, yes?
Comments, I would recommend, especially if I'm on it, that we have at least one, maybe two finance committee meetings coming up, because I have a lot of questions to ask.
Sure.
And I think some of it can be answered probably better in a meeting situation than tying up the entire board.
Okay. Again, as I said, I'll have Tom reach out to you guys to walk you through the whole thing if you'd like to.
Very good. And that's the end of the corporation, the financial corporation report, and we are now really adjourned.
Thank you.